All right. It is 7:15, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. All members are present, so we do have a quorum. Mr. Kennedy, so please invocation of pledge.
Matthew, we beseech you, Almighty God, to bless this meeting of the Board of Education. So guide and rule over our hearts and our minds, that all our deliberations and decisions may be in accordance with your will and lead to the advancement and welfare of the community of Stratford, whom we serve. Amen. Just turn to the flag. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So, for those of you unaware, we have started the superintendent search process. Last month we had hired somebody, Mary Broderick from CABE. She has met with all the board members and a few other individuals to get some insight into what we might be looking for a superintendent. Some of you might also receive invitations to, actually everybody will, there's a survey that has gone out. If you've got the time, please fill it out. And then there are some focus groups. There's some specific groups, but there are also some open to the public groups. So if you haven't been invited to a specific group, you are invited to the public groups. You can go in, give your input. This is going to help guide us in the process as we work through it. We want to hear the community's input and ensure that we're being thorough through the process. So that is on its way. I'd spoken to Mary Broderick, who's our representative. She had said we had some initial interest last week, but it was early. Outside of that, I don't have any further updates on that. Second part, we currently have a cell phone task force that's being put together, studying the use of cell phones within the school district. When we went through COVID, it was very obvious the detrimental effect of isolation and remote learning for our children, the lack of interaction with their peers, and it stood out, and people spoke about it and were fully aware of it. The problem with cell phones, in my opinion, is very similar. There's a book currently out now, and a number of the schools, I think, are doing workshops on it. Our cell phone task force has been given a book. The book is called The Anxious Generation. I know a number of people have read it. I'm in the process of reading it now. Hopefully this book will help guide us in some of our future decisions on how we deal with cell phones. But it's an amazing book with a lot of insight. I would strongly suggest that for everybody, parents, staff, even some of you students, pick up the book and read it. There's some great information in there. Just how cell phones are a great thing. But like with anything, if they're not used appropriately, they're not proper guardrails, they can be very detrimental both to their child's educational environment and their social and emotional growth. So if you get a chance, pick up the book and read it. It's an amazing book. And it is, I think you guys do have it in the cell phone. I think 6 schools, you said, are currently doing?
Yep, there's 6 schools currently doing book studies and working towards it. And I do have some extra copies for board members that are not on the cell phone task force if you would also like to read it.
All right, so we will move on to our students report, and Jenna Bernardo, you will go first.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jenna Bernardo, and it is a pleasure to speak with you all this evening. Invitations to apply have been sent to Bunnell students who have qualified for the Math Honor Society, and the Science Honor Society has also been accepting applications in a few weeks. There will be a free after-school SAT prep tutoring in math beginning this week, after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays for junior students who want to raise their SAT scores. We're welcoming a new staff member in science, Dr. Eli Patterson. He will be teaching biology classes at Bunnell. We would like to congratulate the 2024 yearbook staff advised by Heather Martiri. The 2024 publication titled One Day at a Time took place in the American Scholastic Press Association's annual review and contest. We would also like to congratulate Abby Owen, Bunnell Reading Specialist, who was awarded the Vicky Soto Grant. Abby will be purchasing books that are also streaming so that students can engage in both critical reading and viewing. It's hard to believe that the scheduling and course selection process for the 2025-2026 school year is already underway. On January 10th, Bunnell hosted its annual AP/ECE potential panel, which was live streamed for the entire student body. The purpose of this panel was to discuss the benefits of taking a dual enrollment course and to inform students of all the AP and dual enrollment courses Bunnell has to offer. Members of the panel included AP and ECE teachers, counselors, current students, alumni, and a representative from UConn. The event ended with a Q&A session, and students had a lot of positive feedback and left feeling informed about the courses Bunnell has to offer. Tomorrow, the guidance department is hosting a junior college planning event in the auditorium for all juniors and families. Over 60 parents and guardians will be in attendance. The Bunnell stage is excited to announce that our spring musical is Disney's High School Musical. Our students are also very excited to be going to see Wicked on Broadway this upcoming May. The music department's spring concert is set for Tuesday, May 20th. Aiden Garcia and Jordan Pierce were named All-State in football, and Diallo Cohen was also named both All-State and All-Regional New England in boys soccer. Nate Bannon and Ricky Miller, along with the head football coach Ty Jenkins, attended the 17th annual Walter Camp Breakfast of Champions held at Mohegan Sun on January 18th. Nate and Ricky were both selected for the All-Connecticut Defense second team. Lindsey Basil, indoor track, and Luke Dolan, boys swim, were recognized as our January Athletes of the Month. Our boys basketball team is currently ranked 3rd in Division III with an overall record of 11-2. Bunnell alumni Max Edwards was named the 8th to 10th Conference Player of the Week in men's basketball. In indoor track, on January 11th, Ryan Gonzalez broke the school pole vault record with a jump of 13 feet, 0 inches, breaking the previous record of 12 feet and 6 inches. On January 18th, Alex Bakerito set the 5,000 meter school record with a time of 16 minutes and 48 seconds. In the same meet, Lindsey Basil set the school pentathlon record with a score of 2,809, finishing 2nd overall in the meet. Student government held a successful and lively Spirit Week prior to holiday break. The student government is also joining HOSA to host the next school-based blood drive on March 4th. We have a meeting to discuss with the American Red Cross on Friday, January 31st to discuss recruiting donors. In other student news, this morning, 12 new student leaders were trained as student mentors as part of our new Bunnell Peer Review Board. Special thanks to our presenters, Maura Brennan, James Olson, and Dan Jascott for working with these outstanding leaders. This week, Bunnell and Stratford High Schools will begin the SAT Prep after-school tutoring program. This program is free of charge and will run on Tuesdays and Thursdays through March. All juniors will take the school day SAT on March 26th. Lastly, Bunnell would like to congratulate Student Government President Wisdom Louisi on his acceptance to Columbia University on a full scholarship. Wisdom will study computer science and applied mathematics this fall. Thank you for your time and have a great rest of your evening.
Was worried about everyone.
So we've done it.
Good evening.
It's on, I know it's pretty
Good evening. My name is Zoe Bernard, and I'm a student at Stratford High School. It's a pleasure to be able to speak to you this evening. I would like to wish each of you a Happy New Year. January is a transition month. Last Tuesday through Friday were midterm and final exams, and today was the start of the second semester. This change brings excitement as we prepare for our final semester at SHS. Exciting news! Taylor Dunbar, an extremely talented artist from Stratford High School, received a Scholastic Art Honorable Mention Award for her mixed media artwork entitled Gilded. Taylor's piece will be on display at the Joseph and Silk Gallery on the campus of the University of Hartford Art School from January 13th to the 31st. Two students from Stratford, Danny Planis from Bunnell and Alex Lugo from Stratford High, auditioned and were selected to perform in the CMEA Western Region High School Jazz Band. This audition was very competitive, and there are only 18 students in this ensemble total, with students from all over Fairfield County auditioning. They recently performed at Wilton High School. Congratulations to both of them for representing the Stratford Public Schools. Our advanced classes competed in a holiday door decoration contest. With a record-breaking number of votes, Mr. Cavalier's advanced classroom won with their Peanuts cartoon door. The students in this advanced class were rewarded with a breakfast. Junior ring dance ticket sales were held last week. 186 tickets were sold. The junior ring dance will be held at Bizzano's Four Seasons on February 13th. In the humanities department, we are proud to welcome back the international relations students who attended the Yale Model United Nations this past weekend. Over the course of 4 days, Yale Model UN challenged student delegates to engage and think critically. Through many committees, which most of them had no more than 30 delegates, students researched historical disputes and conflicts, investigated humanitarian crises and responses, and worked towards collaboration to solve the most pressing of current international issues. They passed dozens of resolutions that addressed a wide range of topics, developing leadership, empathy, and teamwork skills that are crucial in shaping our next generation of world leaders. Thank you to social studies teacher Caitlin Indiviri for preparing these scholars, and to teacher Michael DeCenzo for chaperoning over the course of the weekend. We are also gearing up to support 10th grader Natasha Schumann in her four-way speech competition in partnership with Rotary on February 8th at 1:30 p.m. One of the world's most widely printed and quoted statements of ethics is the four-way test, which was created in 1932 by Rosarian Herbert J. Taylor. Adopted by Rotary in 1943, the four-way speech test will ask the following 4 questions of the things we think, say, and do. Is it fair? Is it the truth? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And is it beneficial to all concerned? Please come out to the Stratford Library to support her as she delivers her speech. In the STEM department, on the science side of things, Mr. Walsh and some science students are gearing up for the Science Olympiad at UConn in February. In this event, students work together in teams of up to 15 to compete in 23 oriented events. These events change from year to year, but topics include anatomy and biology, earth science, chemistry, physics, geology, mechanical and structural engineering and technology. Mr. Walsh and the science team are working hard for the return to the Olympiad and hope to improve on their past successes. On the math side of the department, one of our math teachers, Mr. Fu, oversees the Stratford High School Asian Student Union. He and his students created a beautiful display on the 3rd floor bulletin board to prepare for the upcoming Lunar New Year and their celebration on January 29th. Additionally, math teachers continue to try new strategies in engaging with the practices of thinking classrooms. During a recent BTC visit, one of our math teachers, Mrs. Rimkunis, chose to give problems verbally as opposed to on paper for frequent reference. After one example, students understood the importance of collaboration with their group mates to ensure they didn't miss any of the key aspects of the problem. The school counseling department has been working with students to help them meet their college admissions deadlines. Many students who were still unsure of their commitment to four-year universities applied to community college. 27% of our students have successfully completed their FAFSA, and those students are eagerly awaiting their college decisions along with their financial awards. With semester 1 coming to a close, students are gearing up for semester 2. Since scheduling for the next year has begun, our teachers are making recommendations and school councilors have begun the process for next year. In athletics, our girls basketball team qualified for the state tournament in their victory over Brookfield on Tuesday. Senior captain Jasmine Wright was nominated for the CHSCA's Basketball Player of the Week in her performance of scoring 21 points with 17 rebounds versus Bunnell and 29 points with 15 rebounds versus New Milford. Congratulations, Jasmine. The Stratford High School cheer team took home first place at the Fairfield Ludlow competition in Fairfield this past Saturday. Congratulations. The same day in the JV competition, our JV squad also placed third in the all-girl JV division. Our varsity team will compete in the SWC Championship this Friday at Newtown High School. Good luck. The Stratford High School dance team, which I'm a part of, are preparing for their upcoming competition at UDA Nationals this week. We are excited to represent Stratford High School. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today, and I hope everyone will enjoy their evening.
Mr. Brennan, I don't remember, did we get to talk about our last year's speaker, Mr. Brennan?
No, but first, could you give us the date and time again of the Rotary speech?
Yes, I believe it's February 8th. Yes, February 8th at 1:30 p.m.
At the library, you said, right?
Yes.
And there'll be representatives from both high schools there.
It's at the school library?
Yes.
Stratford Library. Stratford Library.
The library, town library.
Town.
Oh, town, okay. And then I want to mention that Dan Brennan, who represented Stratford High last year, graduated from Marine Corps boot camp on January 17th, #1 in his class. Promoted, and he would have been here tonight, but he flew back to South Carolina today for 4 more weeks of training before he goes to Texas for training. He's going to be a firefighter in the Air Wing.
Thank you. Thank you, Janice. Do we have any public speakers? No. Okay. Ms. Shake, I noticed you were here, state legislative report, do you want to give us some updates? Yes, John.
Good evening, everyone. First, I want to say hello. I'm looking forward to working with all of you and hearing from many of you, I'm sure. It's not a secret that this legislative session is going to be very challenging, not just for Stratford, but for the majority of our municipals across the state. My priority is trying to bring as much funding back into our town and for our schools and for our programs. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you regularly in building that relationship. I think it works best when you have the face-to-face conversations. So there's not much for me to report on initially right now. We're going to be hearing from the governor and hearing what his address is going to be on the 5th, I believe, of February. There are, concepts right now in the legislature that are being raised, whether it's ECS funding or special education funding. Those are priority issues in the Senate and in the House. So, if you have ideas, thoughts, recommendations, please reach out to me directly, and we'll hopefully be able to get what we need here in Stratford. And we know how challenging it is. Any questions?
No questions, but I have 2 letters.
Sure.
That were sent specifically to other legislatures, legislative representatives, but I want to give them to you as well.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that you can share them widely. They are directly in reflection into special education funding, and also into capping what out-of-district placements can charge districts, so not just approving programs, but actually capping what they can pay. So they're pretty detailed. They're in collaboration with multiple superintendents, and I would love it if you could take those forward.
So this, it's addressed to Representative Leeper,
Yep,
so
she's
she's
got a
already
copy.
received
Yep,
this.
she's already
So I
received
can have a conversation with her about
You
it.
can.
When I see you tomorrow, I'll
Yes.
be up in Hartford all
You
day,
can.
if that's possible.
Yeah, and one of them is from CAPS, and the other one is from the Southern Fairfield County group. That's the one that went to Representative Leeper.
Okay. So all of these districts, this is primarily from. Okay. Anything that jumps out from this that you want me to know off the cuff?
Yeah, the 2 things that are most impactful from the groups that I've been working with is that oftentimes we feel like at the state level, they choose one or the other. And in order for us to get this done, both of those issues have to be dealt with. They need to better fund excess cost, but they also need to cap what we're being charged. Because if you only fund us better, the out-of-district placement costs are just going to go up.
Right.
Even one of our RESCs increased 11% this year. And no district or town can handle those continuous increases.
Agreed.
So I'm hoping what comes out is not one or the other, but both.
Noted. Anything else?
Well, you've heard me say over the years,
Oh, come on,
unfunded
I
state
know what you're gonna
mandates.
say, I know what
So please,
Yes.
no more unfunded state mandates.
Yes. One of the bills, I'll just let you know now, that I co-sponsored, is HB 5845. It's an act concerning funding for school meals. And Bill, you're gonna love this. It's to provide funding to reimburse districts for the difference between federal reimbursement rate for reduced price and fully paid meals. So it's something that is needed. We know here in Stratford, don't quote me exactly, I think 47% of our students here qualify for reduced or free school meals. So we know that our kids are not able to have nutritious meals, regular meals, snacks, that they don't have the optimal ability to be in a classroom and to be able to learn and grow and thrive. So I think as of right now, there's over 40 legislators who signed on to co-sponsor. That's a priority for us. And all of my colleagues that I have spoken to thus far, education funding is a top priority. And those costs that you're referring to with the out of district of capping is also a very large part of the discussion. So as I get information, I will share information with all of you.
We're excited to have you advocate for us.
Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
Yes. So one of the bills they had talked about, SB1, was a funding mechanism for, and I don't remember the exact bill, but another bill they had passed. So they passed a bill that said you can do this, and they didn't pass the funding piece. I saw somewhere that they were going to be talking or bringing back to the floor SB1 for this year. Hopefully we can move that forward. And so year after year, we go through this budget process. We see all the red shirts come out. We say fully fund our Board of Ed. But people don't look at the lack of funding that we don't get from the state. Promises made by the state, whether it's ECS, reimbursements, whatever it may be, we don't get that. And this year, I think our biggest hurdle will be the funding from the state or the lack of funding from the state. And I guess what we're asking, and I'll read through the list, just whatever, but I guess what we're asking is not even to give us more money, but just give us what you promised. Because year after year, the state doesn't meet those promises, and that burden falls on the towns, and it falls on people like us who are volunteers, on the Board of Ed and the council, to make these hard decisions, and people's lives are impacted. So, but the electricity rates, we had the recent increase in those, which has a huge impact. You talked briefly about it, but the school lunch reimbursement, every year we run about $100,000 deficit, and I think Ms. Mangini said today it's the legislation written by the state. It's not the federal legislation, but the state legislation that dictates how we can collect that. And we've looked at it in our policy committee and another couple other avenues, but realize there's really nothing we can do. We're told we can do it, but then we're told we can't do it. So, we're always left holding the bag at the end of the day. The sick leave legislation, which is a disaster. Teachers can call in at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day and say, I'm not coming back to school. So how would the state, who passed this legislation, expect us as a school board to effectively man the classroom, or keep the teachers in the classroom? It's either we have to have a full-time substitute who kind of bounces around in the hope that, it's my understanding that our union has decided they're going to follow the regulations, or they're already negotiated contracts, but it's a horrible, horrible piece of legislation that did not look into the impact of especially our school district. The cap on the Alliance this year. What's that?
Can I just add to that one a little
Sure,
bit?
absolutely.
Some of the challenges that the superintendents brought forward already regarding the sick leave law are just, nobody took into account, how we account for time out. And so by saying people can take things by the hour, or you're accumulating by the hour, that's not how a public school classroom runs. And you're never going to get a sub to come in for 1 hour. And that's why we have always done half days. It becomes extremely challenging for fidelity, for education purposes. Never mind the accounting that is going to make HR go crazy trying to figure it all out. But they didn't think about the safety of schools, right? If everybody decides to go take an hour, who's taking care of the children?
I think that, you're raising topics that are being raised across the state. It's not just unique to Stratford.
Yeah.
But I do want to emphasize, the state funding that our town has received, because I've been on still on council, this is my last term, but we have had an increase of state funding coming in. And through those budget process, weeks, months that we get into, it's been the town side that has not been giving X amount of dollars of an increase. The same rate as the state, which we could get into a lengthy debate about. And then that falls on the town council, it falls on the Board of Education to figure out how are you going to pass your budgets. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And here you on electricity rates, you get to negotiate your rates, and the town has actually looked at what the Board of Ed has done, thank you Pam, in being able to lock in those negotiations, which has actually saved the town a lot of money. So I have faith that we'll still be able to kind of navigate and then possibly be an example for other districts across the area. The sick leave, when we're talking about education, I work in healthcare. That's my actual job. So whatever people are exposed to being in a classroom is much more concentrated than the average person who is probably walking into an office or something. But the intention of the sick leave bill is to give workers the option in the event that they become sick. The staffing is what I'm hearing from you, of not having enough staff, full-time, part-time teachers to staff our classrooms and then have to buoy through with substitute teachers is a different challenge. But that's not it. But it's not to say that the reality of the situation is, well, this is what these are the metrics of what this financial impact is, and not having those people in the classroom. So whether we're talking about education, or you're talking about healthcare, or you're talking about, having a conversation with our fire and police about staffing needs and trying to recruit and retain workers to come to Stratford and want them to stay in Stratford. These are all, tough conversations.
We have a great fill rate this year, so
Yeah.
we have the
good.
staff. What we don't have are substitutes if everybody decided to go take that hour. And as much as I do agree with you, that probably was the intention, that's not how it was written. So because it wasn't written that way, people can take advantage, and in other districts, they already are. I am thoroughly thankful that we have an amazing teachers union that has not done things like that at this point in time.
Correct.
But we have lots of superintendents that are dealing with the opposite. So it's not that I don't think that was the intention of the sick leave law, it's the way it was written doesn't say that.
So here in Stratford, just so I understand when I have to go have my conversations, are we seeing that within the town of Stratford, within our public schools, or is the occurrence is what you're describing or whatever it
So
is?
we just sent our notification out about the sick leave, but I do know that our teachers union has communicated greatly with their union.
Mhm.
And right now, we are not seeing people, what I would call, abuse that.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that they would.
But they have in other districts. So I've already had meetings with the commissioner and with the other superintendents in districts that are pushing and taking advantage of it because of the way it's written. There's nothing that our HR office can do. There's no requirement of a doctor's note. There's literally nothing we can do.
So it's
in
the
order to prevent it.
definition.
It's the way it was. I think they didn't think thoroughly about education, how an education system runs. And we want to support people's mental health, trust me. And you have lots of principals that would gladly be like, I need you to go home and take care of yourself because you need to, right? But we also have a responsibility to our students. And the way in which that legislation was written makes it harder for us to hold staff accountable to service our students and puts our building administrators, frankly, in a really tough spot. We have staff, we don't have.
So you're looking for accountability measures here?
We're looking for it to be manageable, right? And to
Okay.
think about a school system. And if it said for an emergency when you get sick, that is very different than, you can take an hour without telling us why or any other reason and just take an hour because you have an hour.
Okay.
And so that makes it really hard. I love Stratford and I love how people work here, so I don't foresee, Jack Del Piano calling me and saying, 60 teachers just left for an hour and didn't come back. They really could.
Yeah.
And so that is a significant concern.
So in that regard, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for giving more of a background on that for Stratford. What I would love if you could provide it, is data with no names, but just, you know, what the reason is, you know, if there is a reason.
They
that's
don't have
able
to
be
give- they don't
have to
documented.
give
Can't
one.
give one.
They don't have to
Okay.
give one now. That's how
Alright.
it's written, and
I
that's,
guess more of the frequency.
we can definitely give you some attendance. We already struggle in Stratford with attendance, right, for everybody, our students, our staff, our everybody, and we are getting better, but this may throw a wrench in that.
Okay.
You know, and somebody gave a really terrible example, right? But I could technically, if I built up enough time, take an hour off at the end of every day to go golfing for my mental health. Because I don't have to give you a reason. And if you see a picture of me golfing, I'm not in trouble.
Got it.
Or you could call in at 12 noon and say, I'm taking that hour off, and then the classroom goes unattended by staff.
And you're talking about whole systems. I mentioned teachers because we need them to be with the students, but you have your secretaries, you have your paraeducators, you have your nurses, you have your custodians, who's going to clean our building at night, you know, and without notice,
Yeah.
without people giving us notice,
Sure.
and without an opportunity to fill those positions, this type of a legislation can really put us out of school.
So my perspective is that, you know, anything that's already, you know, legislated or we have laws, what have you, there's always an opportunity, right, to amend and improve things and very helpful in an education building. If you give me the information and data and speaking to you and speaking to the teachers union to get that, you know, hopefully
We can
we
definitely-
meet at a middle road. And then that helps me so that I can then go up to Hartford and do my job with who I'm speaking to and hear from other legislators who, it sounds like, based off the letter, with all the other districts that have signed on to it who are experiencing.
And I would say you probably have a
Concerns.
lot of colleagues that have already heard about the sick leave law too, because again, superintendents, you know, called for an emergency meeting.
Yeah.
They did send somebody over from the governor's office to speak with all of us, because there was just such a large amount of concern. So you won't be able, we'll give you all that, but you'll go there and you'll have lots of people that have also heard
Okay.
that it just is really tough for us to implement the way it was written.
It would be very helpful if I could have it like by the middle of next week, if that's possible.
Yes,
Because
Courtney.
things are moving so fast.
If we have data to give, yes.
Yeah.
We'll give you, we'll
It's just
definitely-
enacted at this
We'll
point,
give you
so
all of
there's
our
not much to-
concerns.
Yeah.
What we can do is give you all of our concerns and our current attendance rate, so you can know where we're already fighting from. So if this does impact greater, we can let you know next month and the month after. We just sent out notification.
Okay, that would be great.
But at least you'll go there knowing where we're worried, what we're worried most about.
Right, and my main concern is Stratford, just to be clear. Thank you.
Ms. Mangina, was there, our electric costs this year, had they gone up because of the new tax or the adjustment? Can you speak to that?
They have because of the Pura tax, and we were affected by that. So I think I've explained to the board before that we had significant savings in our budget last year, and it was as a result of that Pura tax not being implemented, but yet we had to budget for it. This year, our advisor suggested that we take a more conservative approach and not budget as much, and because it was enacted, we could be seeing a deficit of about $300,000 in our electricity costs. So we are a little bit concerned about that. Even though we are locked in to our rate, that's only a portion of the bill, right? We still have to pay all the taxes. We have a generation fee versus the transmission fee. So, yeah, it definitely has impacted our costs as well.
Noted.
So that's, yeah, it's another 300,000. The Stratford, and I know you have, I don't think you've been around for 20 years, I've been around for 20 years. Stratford has always historically been underfunded in our ECS funding. And we're told again that this year we're going to come up short again. We talked about capping some of the out-of-district costs. Special ed reimbursement on our high costs, excess costs. We are typically reimbursed at 80%, and now the state is talking about only reimbursing us at 60%. So these are millions of dollars that come out of our budget. So if the state lives up to its promises, we won't have all the red shirts at the board meetings and at the council meetings saying fully fund the Board of Ed, because the state will also contribute their part, their promise, and it is promises that they've made. I'm sorry to put you in the hot seat, I know you're new at this.
Oh,
but
no.
I welcome all these questions.
Yeah. So anyway, those are just some of the things that we're looking at as not only now, not only Stratford, but the entire state. And we're all struggling, and Ms. Borges can speak to it a little more. I'm going to be going tomorrow to the CAVE meeting, District 6, I think it's called, over in Westport to meet with some other
Yeah, I
folks.
won't be there, I'll be up in Hartford.
Yeah.
I'll miss.
But it is, people are starting to come together now, boards of eds and districts and superintendents, to talk about these issues because they're becoming detrimental to our ability to educate our kids. And it's because the state makes promises, mandates we do certain things, and then don't live up to their financial end of that promise. So it happens year after year, but this year it seems to be worse than other years. So.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very challenging year for budgeting across all issues, because Stratford is the large receptor of federal funding, and that is the big question mark of how that's going to impact Connecticut, not just education. So when people are talking about the rainy day fund or the guardrails and trying to use some of that money to then help subsidize or use that funding to then go into essential services, we're going to have to see what the next few weeks. I don't like to make any promises I don't intend to keep ever, and I hate making false promises. So my job is to advocate for the town and for our schools and for everyone who gets to be here and enjoy everything that we have. But it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of collaboration. So again, I'm looking forward to working with all of you and hearing from you in the next few weeks.
We appreciate it greatly. So I think where some of Mr. Henrich's, frustration or stress comes is the same thing that Ms. Mangini and I deal with each of our groups, her CASBO group and the superintendent's group. And so the state had made an agreement to let people know what their alliance funding was going to be, and to give us an indication of our excess cost funding by December 31st. Okay, so in January, they sent us out basically saying we were going to get no additional funding for alliance, no increase whatsoever for Stratford. And so that came out in a big spreadsheet that Ms. Mangini got and that I got. And that is worrisome, because to have zero increase in your alliance dollars when you have positions in there that move steps is just not feasible. And so in addition to that, to then get the email saying that they're potentially giving districts the lowest excess cost funding that they ever have, really sent us all into a panic and a bit of stress. Do I think that's going to change with all the pressure up there? I do, right? Do I think the final numbers that come out in February and March may be different? I'm really hopeful. And we know, like when I'm saying all this, I know it's not just you, right? I'm advocating for Stratford so you can bring Stratford's voice there. But these are the things that, from Ms. Mangini's group and my group, when we sit and we talk about it, that's the extra stress you get going into your budget request, right? Because I have to stop and think, ooh, do I need to build anything from Alliance into the regular budget just to cover the positions that are in there because the state is saying I'm getting nothing as an increase? Or do I remain hopeful that everybody gets something, or that we're going to have better funding for excess cost? It just leaves us in a little bit of stress and limbo, and I'm glad the state said they wanted to give us these numbers earlier, but if giving us the numbers earlier means we're not getting an accurate number, that's actually worse to me. I'd rather wait than hear, So that I think is, part of what Mr. Henrich was saying.
Well, everybody's frustration about budgetary items, I mean, the town, don't get me started on the town side.
Yeah.
Right, so, but throughout the entire state, again, because of the realities of, down in Washington, what we are anticipating to possibly not receive, and the ripple effect of what that means, trickling down from the feds to the state to the local. And it's not a secret. We try every single year to try and put things together so that we can still have our essential services funded. And to me, that includes education. So
we appreciate your advocacy.
Thank you.
And we'll keep fighting and advocating here.
Mr. Cormier?
I just want to say I'm excited to have you advocating for us in Hartford. I know you're a fighter, and I think the list that Mr. Henrich gave you. It's a nice to-do list for you, just something, bullet items to keep track of, just to keep your head down and look for us and keep an eye out for us. It's not a list that's been provided to the legislators in our legislative report over the last year plus that we've been here. So I think it's very it's a very clear list of things we're concerned about, and it's nice to hear it come out in the as clearly to our state legislator. Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you. I don't have cards yet, but you all know how to reach me. So.
We get your mail every.
Oh, good.
Caitlin, did you get a copy of our Finance Committee agenda?
No.
There's a report in there on the food services that might help you on. Is this extra copies over there?
They're out in the.
They're right in the hall.
$100,000, is that weird?
It's not
No,
necessarily in that
different
report,
from
maybe
it.
Ms. Mangini can send that over to you. But just so you know, every month since I took over as chairmanship, I added state legislators report onto our agenda, so it's a monthly item.
Okay.
We also now have our State Board of Ed rep on as an agenda item as well. Ms. Rickard represents us on the State Board of Ed, so I've added that onto this, but we would appreciate you coming, listening to us, and maybe keeping us updated on what we can expect and what's going on up there.
Absolutely. I'm here as long as I can be here. Before here, I had WPCA ordinance and then pension for the town. So when I'm not working or I'm not up in Hartford, if I can be here, I will be here. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So our next step will be an executive session. So once we go into executive session, we're going to turn off the microphones, clear the room. We will have 2 executive sessions, and I would look for, we make the motion for both at the same time, Mr. Carter?
Yeah.
I look for a motion to enter an executive session to discuss Kim Marie Perillo versus the Town of Stratford Board of Ed and Susan Shepherd versus the Town of Stratford Board of Ed. The executive session will include board members, Mr. Cotter and Courtney Braun, our HR, from our HR department. Moved by Ms. Fidel, second by Mr. O'Brien. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. So we're gonna, for those who aren't aware, we're gonna go back at 8:20. I look for a motion to return from executive session. Very good. Motion by Ms. Fidel, seconded by Mr. O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. In the issue, Kim Marie Perillo versus Town of Stratford BOE, I would look for a motion to accept the attorney's recommendation.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Fidel, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record, no votes are taken in executive session. I think you got to put that on the record.
Do I? Haven't had to do it yet, but okay. So just for the record, no votes were taken in executive session on either of these matters.
Thank you.
All those opposed? Motion passed unanimously. In the case Susan Shepherd versus the Town of Stratford BOE, I would look for a motion to accept the attorney's recommendation.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Fidel,
Second.
second by Mr. O'Brien. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
You can stay if you like. You're off the clock.
Have a good night.
So we have no attorney's report this evening, so we would move past that on to the superintendent's executive report. Ms. Portis.
Good evening, board members, colleagues, and community members. I thank you for the opportunity to give you some updates on the critical work we've been doing to support our students and staff. I'd like to begin by emphasizing our commitment to advocacy for our students. In the past month, I have joined with other superintendents across the state to address pressing issues impacting our ability to provide equitable education for all students. One of the major areas of focus has been the escalating costs of special education, particularly tuition for the outplacement programs and transportation. Through the collective effort with CAPS, I co-signed a letter to the state education leaders. This letter outlines the urgent need for sustainable funding to build in-district programs and calls for stronger oversight of private outplacement facilities. Our goal is to reduce the financial burden on districts while ensuring students receive high-quality, equitable service. I also signed a letter addressed to Representative Jennifer Leeper alongside district leaders with the Southern Fairfield County Superintendent's Group advocating for fully funding the excess cost grant. We're pushing for changes to the reimbursement formula that would lower the threshold from 4.5 times to 3 times per pupil expenditure. These changes would provide much needed relief to districts like ours and enable us to allocate resources more effectively across all programs. Advocacy like this isn't just about numbers and policies. It's about making sure that every student has the opportunity to succeed and that our educators have the tools to support what they need to make that happen. I strongly encourage our community, our Board of Education, to join me in the push for the state to make this change. As we enter the second semester of our school year, much of our focus has been on our district is to track and meet our goals. A significant amount of this time has been spent on putting our budget presentation together. This is particularly challenging when we're unsure of the funding we're going to get directly from the state. And there's so many times where as a board we have conflict or we don't agree. This is something we can all agree on. And this is something that we need to work with our town to advocate for strongly. There are towns that are working collaboratively together with superintendents to go to the state to meet with them. There are letters that are coming out from every district, and we can join them, and I think we should. I think it's vitally important, and it's going to really help us as we try to plan for what's best for our students. I do want to touch on just a few other important things. As I promised at the board meeting, I wanted to bring up our AI task force. Artificial intelligence is flying at us 100 miles an hour. I'm hoping that our community will continue to read the weekly newsletter that comes out from the superintendent's office that now has a dedicated spot to give some tips about AI. Our teachers are also now receiving newsletter and updates about AI. We are developing professional development plans for next year that are centered around AI integration. We are interviewing different AI platforms and evaluating their potential support for the district. We're creating comprehensive communication plans and a policy for our district to bring to the policy committee and move forward. Whether we like it or not, this is what's coming at us, and we need to be prepared to tackle it appropriately. I am so proud of this task force. I am so thankful for the direction from CES that we have received in putting this together, and I wanted to make sure that each board meeting I give you an update on the next steps. So right now, we are looking at a policy that'll head to our policy committee, and we are looking at those professional development plans and the comprehensive communication plan. While this is a demanding time of year, it's also one of great hope and determination, and we remain deeply committed to supporting all of our staff and our students as we navigate these times. And I want to thank the Board of Education for your continued support and advocacy for each of our students. I think we really are making a difference, so I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
So your request from the state, can you clarify specifically what you would like us to support?
So you have two letters that I have given you that I drafted in collaboration with other superintendents. We worked together as a group to agree on those. So really what I'm asking you to do is to carefully read those letters. And within those, you'll see we're asking for the state to fully fund excess cost. We are asking for them to not just fund the excess cost, but to also put a cap on the amount of what out-of-district placements and transportation can charge us each year for the increases. Right now, the state approves programs we can send students to. There's a list, we have PPTs, we agree to place a student. What the state doesn't do is cap what those places can charge us. So even if they do fund us better, if we do not put some limits on what we can be charged, increased funding will simply go to increased charges. This year, we even saw an increase from our RESC of 11%, which is unheard of. Your RESC is where you're supposed to be able to send your students for the most efficient cost. And it's just becoming astronomical. So we are looking to get fully funded, possibly even make the formula a little more comprehensive. Right now, they're only considering that formula to be improved for districts that are smaller than 1,000 students. We would like it improved for everybody. And then we would like them to monitor, approve, and work with the out-of-district placements on appropriate costs.
So here's what I would like to do in reference to that. I would like to talk to you and refine a petition that we as a board can sign. I'd like to bring it to the board on Monday prior to your, should be just a very brief meeting, but I detailed some of the items today, but just refine that. Detail those items we as a board want to stand behind. Sign it or give me the authority as the chairman, or we sign it as an entire group.
It's more powerful if you all sign it, and it'll be a letter of support, not a petition.
Yep. But what I would like to do is send it to other boards too, and have a blank page for them to sign, or whatever it may be. But and you and I had talked about this about a month ago, is starting that petition to ask other boards to support us in that endeavor. So, maybe we can talk, and then we'll schedule, what time is the 6:30?
6:30.
So maybe at 6 o'clock or 6:15, I think would be brief, but, or 6 o'clock on Monday, we'll schedule a very brief meeting to discuss that, and with everybody's support, we'll sign it as a group and send it along its way. So,
I can try to get you guys something by Friday, so like have the weekend to look at it. And that way, if you have any suggestions for me, you can update that. It'll pretty much say just what those other 2 letters say, just delineated from us. And, you know, there are boards of ed that are talking about doing that and how to band together and how to advocate as, you know, a large group. I think it's important.
And like I said, I am going to the CADE meeting tomorrow, so we'll discuss it then and let them know if there's not one already out there, that we'll be forwarding one out to them and ask for their support as well.
So far, the legislative breakfast has been solely around special education house. That's what the topic has been in all of the breakfasts.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions from this board? No? All right. Next on the list, Chief Operating Officer, Ms. Mangini.
Good evening, everyone. My report actually tonight will be brief because our primary focus has actually been on developing the superintendent's fiscal year 26 budget request. And I know that Acting Superintendent Borges looks forward to presenting her budget to you next Monday evening at February 3rd. And as you know, we have a series of budget workshops planned for February, and I did share the schedule with you again this evening for your convenience. Our first workshop will be next Wednesday evening, February 5th, and at that time we'll review the salaries, benefits, and the curriculum portions of the budget. And then additional workshops are planned for February 10th and February 12th, which will allow us to get through the remaining areas. We are starting with the biggest next Wednesday. And then the board approval is set at your regular meeting on February 24th. So should we need additional meetings, we do have a little bit of time in between. In addition, I wanted to let the board know that Rich Ruggiero, Susan Hughes, and I did have an opportunity to review the final version of the capital budget with Heather recently. So it's now ready to be presented to planning and subsequently moved on to the full board for approval. And then lastly, I'm really happy to report, and I thank Susan Nicholson and her team, all our W-2s were sent out last week. Everything's been filed appropriately, and we're also on target with the town auditors to finalize the auditing reporting requirements from our perspective, just some adjustments by the January 31st deadline. So it's been a busy month, but we're moving along quite well. And that's my report this evening.
Are there any questions for Ms. Mangini? Well, if you would like to go as well, you may.
Thank you. I am going to wait and hear my colleague here, and then I'm
And then since I do not see Ms. Diorio, I would assume that's you, Mr. Piazza.
That is me. I do want to start by, I know most of them have left, but I want to really give some congratulations to the admin and the teachers and the students of the high schools. We do get to hear about their accomplishments as we're walking through the building and via email, but to hear them all together like this, it was really impressive. I don't know, it hit me tonight how impressive a lot of the accomplishments of our teachers and students are, so props to them. I just wanted to say that. But on behalf of Dr. Diorio and myself, I'm pleased to share some updates from teaching and learning. I am going to start with pre-K 6, highlighting our progress, initiatives, and upcoming activities. Our preschool team is actively engaging in creating a multi-tiered system of supports, our MTSS process tailored for our younger learners. This initiative aims to provide early intervention and targeted support, ensuring that our preschoolers are well prepared for kindergarten. Additionally, our preschool program has undergone a formal name change with the State Department of Education. It is now officially the Vicky Soto Preschool, dropping the previous Stratford Academy affiliation. In regards to the kindergarten age policy, to align with the Connecticut kindergarten age cutoff law, we have established a formal process for students who do not meet the September 1st age requirement. Parents seeking a waiver must submit a written request directly to their child's designated school principal. And for families uncertain about their designated school, our registration department and the pre-K-6 office are readily available to assist and provide guidance. We are gearing up for the interview process for the principal positions at Franklin and Lordship Elementary Schools. This process will involve multiple stakeholders to ensure a comprehensive and inclusive approach to selecting the best candidate for these leadership roles. If any board members are interested in participating, please reach out to Dr. Diorio. Your support and perspective would be invaluable. And our mid-year assessments are nearing completion. Once finalized, we will analyze the results, focusing on NWEA and DIVLS scores. These results will offer critical insights into student progress and help inform our next steps. And we will be sharing these findings with the board in February. Moving on, I'm also pleased to provide an update on the ongoing efforts to enhance our curriculum and our curriculum revision cycle document. Significant progress has been made in tracking and verifying the foundational elements of our district's curriculum documentation. So hopefully this update will outline some accomplishments as well as our next steps. In terms of tracking the written curriculum, along with Dr. Diorio and help with many people throughout the district, an inventory of existing written curriculum across all grade levels is nearing completion. This process has included locating and cataloging both digital and hard copy, when available, documents to ensure we have a full accounting of all of our curricular documents and materials. We're also, part of that is verification of Board of Education approval dates. Again, a shout out to Deb Mackey, Teresa Lakutis, and all the department leaders for helping us track down those dates. We have cross-referenced current curriculum documents with Board of Ed meeting records to confirm approval dates. This step ensures that our records are aligned with board actions and that all curriculum materials have been properly vetted and approved. Our next steps over the next few months, February, March, and April, will be to develop an update and revision schedule. Again, a formalized schedule for curriculum updates and revision will be established, ensuring a consistent 5-year review cycle. We will also be reviewing new course proposals. So discussions are underway to consider any new courses that align with emerging student needs, workforce demands, and district goals. So we are making really steady progress. I'm really happy with the progress. You know, when I first looked at the document, I was concerned about how long it might take, but you know, through the collective efforts, I'm really happy with our progress. And it has not yet been shared. My goal is to share it at the next curriculum committee meeting and then with the full board after that. In terms of, one other thing I want to share is the development of the Stratford Curriculum Handbook. This is a new initiative, and again, working along with Dr. Diorio. We will be bringing that to the curriculum committee in February as well. And what this handbook's goal is to outline a comprehensive process for developing, revising, and evaluating curriculum, of course aligned with state and national standards. So part of that will include all of our curriculum development processes, our curriculum format that they will follow, and then input into our Atlas system, which is our online database for all curriculum, as well as outline and define the review and approval process, i.e. the timetable for review, approval from the curriculum committee, and then the full board, and how long that takes. So again, we should be presenting that at the next curriculum meeting, which is February 11th, and then we'll bring that to the board after that. And one final update just on social studies in particular. Again, working alongside the department leaders and Dr. Diorio and our social studies teachers, we are beginning to engage in meaningful work to explore and implement the new state social studies standards. Again, these have been established, but there's been no deadline for implementation, so we are able to set our own timetable. And right now, our efforts are focused on increasing our teachers' comfort level and confidence with the updated framework. Through our department meetings, including today's work that we did with social studies, various professional development sessions, and collaborative planning time, the teachers will be really diving in to the inquiry-based approach, which emphasizes the development of critical thinking, research, and problem-solving skills in students. So the work really aims to create a dynamic and cohesive approach to social studies instruction, ensuring that they're not only mastering content, but also developing the ability to think critically, engage civically, and connect their learning to real-world issues. And also what we're going to be doing is the department is going to undertake the efforts in vertical alignment to ensure consistency K-12. So we'll be working along across all grade levels. By examining the standards and curriculum this way, the team will work to establish clear connections between grade level expectations and hopefully build a seamless scaffolding approach to student learning and social studies. And as always, we thank the board, we thank the curriculum community for all their support in this work.
Questions?
I just have one. With the Victoria Soto preschool, is Stratford Academy Johnson House changing their name as well because there's no more academy attached to it, or is it just that one building? I don't know. Okay.
Yes, we are changing that as well with the state. So Stratford Academy will no longer be part of the name.
Okay.
The Vicky Soto preschool name was because our preschools have now merged into one. We used to have the integrated preschool and the readiness, and we are now working as one unit to service all of our students, which has been better to prepare all of our kids for kindergarten. It's been a great transition. I do want to say thank you. For those of you that work in education or know the undertaking that they're taking on, it's huge. And they're creating a foundation that's going to make it possible for Stratford to be able to make the growth that we are looking for. And so I know that everyone who has helped you, and you and Diana organizing it, have truly set up an opportunity for us to have the foundation we need academically and accessibility. There have been years where people have not been able to find curriculums. And so the hard work that you guys put in, it's so appreciated. And I know eventually it'll all pay off, and I know it was intimidating and a little overwhelming, but taking it one day at a time really helped.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So you did mention inventorying curriculum. It sounded like you had a difficult time inventorying all our.
It was just, I wouldn't say difficult, it was just time consuming. Because especially with, Google Drive being what it is, the black hole that it is, once you start saving documents and sharing documents, it's hard to find, original documents or the most updated ones. So that did take.
So it's not just me.
It is not just you. It is not just you, I assure you. And of course, some of the older curriculum is literally in binders that had to be pulled off shelves, and so obviously we're looking at those dates where they were approved and the last revision dates, because that's going to dictate how we address the revisions and updating.
So I know when we first were mandated by the state, this is before your time, but we were mandated by your time here. We were mandated by the state to change our reading curriculum. We had looked at 3 or 4 of the programs they mandated, compared it to our Teachers College. Realized Teachers College was not that good. But at the time, I had requested that we go through and before mandated by the state, we review all our curriculum. Was told at the time that we don't do that. I'm glad we have the leadership now that's doing that. I think it's long overdue. When Ms. Gottschalk was here, she had suggested we do a 5-year review of all of our curriculum. And to think that hasn't been done, I mean, if you're pulling binders off the shelves, I'm guessing some of that curriculum is beyond its time frame. And I know we have amazing teachers who have probably improvised and brought things up to standards, but we should, as a district, have curriculums that are updated and reviewed on a 5-year.
And board approved.
Yeah, and board approved, but we were told a 5-year, Ms. Gottschalk said a 5-year, and I think even our bylaws or a committee says 5-year review.
Yeah, that's a common cycle.
Okay, so yeah, hopefully moving forward, that'll be our policy, and we will stay up to date with our teaching.
That's what we're shooting for.
I think, I want to be clear, I think the intention in Stratford is always to make sure that we have wonderful curriculums. It's not so much having the curriculums, we didn't always have the systems that we were collecting them in, and, you know, again, some things were put on shelves. But I also think we have to reflect on the way that job was set up. And so, yes, we have made grounds and we are heading in a good direction, but there are also now 2 people splitting that job and addressing that in a way that is manageable and doable in collaboration with the teachers and the administrators and hunting all of those things down. So I do believe that regardless of who has sat on this board or who has been in the superintendent's position or who has worked for us as teachers, Stratford's intention has always been appropriate and good, and we have always wanted to make sure we are providing our kids with the best education. We're a large district, and a lot of curriculums and things in the teaching and learning department come at you really fast. And that's why I think not only about you organizing and finding all of them, but creating that handbook is vital. Because that handbook is going to help us stay on track that way. And that was our goal from the start, you know, working with Dr. Piazza and Dr. Diorio, was systems. Putting the systems in place so that Stratford can always be successful, no matter who's sitting in these seats. And I believe we can do that. And I think we are heading in that direction.
And I will say the split position is reflected upon and appreciated on a daily basis by Dr. Diorio and myself.
I just want to make sure that there's a differentiation between purchased materials being called curriculum and the curriculum that's being written by our staff. That's the pacing guide, the written instructions and support materials. The teachers' college materials, those we've put those to the side. We're not using those. So there are 2 different. We're calling 2 different things curriculum. So spending 2 years on curriculum committee, and now I think Mr. Kennedy and Ms. Carol Fabian are both on curriculum committee now. They're reviewing the curriculums that are being put in this curriculum binder, online book. That's what's being written by the faculty now, taking the purchase materials and outlining how they're going to be used by how they're writing the curriculum, how the purchase curriculum is going to be used by the faculty. So there's 2 different. We're using curriculum in 2 different ways. So I just want to make sure we're identifying how that's being.
I think that's in general getting tricky, right? Because the state is also referring to the mandated programs as curriculums.
Right, and after 2 years of being on the curriculum committee, I've seen some really a lot of hard work put into those documents and some really legitimate guidance to help teachers teach well and deep. So instead of.
And it sounds like over the next year, you guys are going to be taking some even bigger steps I think the curriculum committee is going to be doing some amazing things over the next year at least to cement some of that background work. So, and I commend everybody's work for it. It's, any other comments, questions? No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So I look for an acceptance of the minutes for the December 16, 2024 meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bryant, seconded by Mr. Kennedy. Any discussion, Mr.?
I had a couple of minor corrections. Let's see, on page 4 under attendance, Laura Dancha was not here recently.
I'll take her off.
And Attorney Burcham was here. And then on page 6, the PHS and SHS scholarship, could you make that corrected to say that each of them got 500? It almost sounds like 500 went to the 2, but
Okay.
they each got
Just
500.
specify that each got 500.
And then same thing with the post-grant funds, they were $250 each. Thanks.
Dr. Piazza, you can also leave, and you'll have to say anything.
Sure.
It's not just Ms. Van June.
Yes.
Thank you.
You know, you have a busy day tomorrow.
Unless you want to stay.
Now you're putting me in a tough spot.
Well, if I could go, I would, so. With any other suggestions? And so you have those, Teresa?
I do.
So I just look for a motion to accept this as
As amended.
Yeah.
Second.
Second, we'll accept it as a friendly amendment, so. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Ms. Rickard, you're up.
Press the button.
We on? Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to update you on the goings-on at the State Board of Education. We've had a very busy month, and it's only going to get more busy, I think. Before I get to legislative questions, which I'm sure there's lots of interest, two pieces of note from our regular board meeting that occurred at the beginning of the month, and this will sound very familiar. The Department of Education informed the board that they have commissioned a study about annual rate setting and that process for private special education services. We've talked about, you've heard about how important it is to provide that stability and the predictability to districts. So what they're going to be looking at is interviewing and learning from states in our country that already do rate setting. So for example, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, and Vermont have all implemented some form of annual rate setting processes for private special education. So our study is going to be involved in communicating with superintendents, state leaders, educators in those states to learn about the potential advantages and disadvantages of doing this, get the stakeholders' perspectives, learning about best practices and pitfalls of when they instituted this type of policy, with the goal trying to be to find the most effective approach to addressing this particular issue in our state. So the commissioner told us that this began in December. She informed us that this is going to be working through the next several months. Time is of the essence, obviously, even with a long legislative session. So she is very keen to get data very quickly back from this study. So I expect that she'll have more updates for us when we have our next regular meeting on that particular topic, which will be in March. Also of note is that the State Board of Education approved a new K-12 World Language Standards. The last time the state approved World Language Standards was a little over a decade ago. There are 5 goal areas in the new World Language Standards about communication, culture, connections, comparisons, and communities. And in reviewing the document, what struck me as an educator was how very purposefully these areas align so well to Portrait of a Graduate. And so I could immediately see, as a classroom teacher, how it will be very easy for our educators to use this document and integrate what we're already doing in our school district and what many other school districts are doing across the state in terms of mastery-based portfolio and Portrait of a Graduate. So that was really wonderful to be a part of that. The CSDE and the Connecticut Council for Language Teachers is going to begin in the spring to offer PD opportunities to administrators and educators around the state, again in the spring. There's no, at this moment, an implementation deadline for those standards, but they are now approved. I know that in our district we're working through a world language curriculum right now, so those documents will be of great use to us moving forward in the next couple of months. In addition to that, I do also just want to, as an aside, remind you from last month when I reported in reference to the comments about excess cost, that in December, when the commissioner submitted the department's budget to the governor had asked for an expansion budget from the Department of Education. And as part of that, the commissioner did ask for increased money in excess cost share. So again, that was what was asked for, but it also aligns to what many people in many different sectors of the education communities are all saying is very much needed. In terms of my work on the Legislative Policy Development Committee, we had a report, interestingly enough, about kindergarten enrollment trends. As was stated previously, the law changed that children must be 5 years or older on or before September 1st to enter kindergarten. And so we looked at preliminary data to see what the ebb and flow was. The data indicate right now that across the state, kindergarten enrollment declined by about 12.3%, while pre-K enrollment increased by about 6%. There were nearly 5,000 students who did not turn 5 across our state by September 1st that were admitted into kindergarten through a waiver process that existed in their district. So it was good to hear that we're on top of having an actual process for waivers. Lots of school districts do not have a formalized process for that. And so that was actually something that was brought up in public comment. People came to address this new legislative initiative and talked about the concerns surrounding waivers. One piece of interesting data that they pulled out so far was that alliance districts tended to see greater enrollment increase of what's known as BER babies, so September BERs, in pre-K comparison to other districts. So that was all based on preliminary fall data. It was stated that districts had until the end of January to update pre-K enrollments, and then the Legislative Policy Committee will be looking at that data later on in the spring in an effort to perhaps suggest amendments to the law that went into effect for this current school year. In regards to other things, over 200 bills so far have been originated in the Education Committee. That doesn't mean that 200 bills will get hearings or see the light of day. There's a wide range of topics, everything that has already been discussed this evening, right up to a very specific point reflective of my position on the State Board of Education. I'm the only practicing educator on the State Board of Education, and there's a bill right now in the Education Committee seeking to codify that at least one of the 11 seats on the State Board of Education is retained and appointed by the governor as a practicing educator. So 200 bills run the gamut. In the next month, some bills will start working their way through to the committee to have hearings, and so I'll be getting regular updates about all of the bills that are coming before. But again, of specific note, there is a special task force and a special legislative committee on special education, and they have been crafting their own language for bills that will have been gone from their committee into the full education committee. And one of them, again, has to do with modifying ECS to include a weighting for special education students. Right now, English language learners have a 25% weight in ECS formula, and they're looking to, one of the recommendations was to modify the law so that special education students also had a 25% weighting. The task force actually went further than that, and looking at the 119K Commission report, that report recommended a 50% weighting for special education students, and that recommendation was adopted by the Special Education Task Force, and then they were asked to craft language around that. So that's something to look forward to very specifically in the upcoming bills. So that's what has been going on in the past month, as well as some other things that I'm sure you've read about in the news. But I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, or if there's anything of particular interest that I can take some notes on for you to bring back, be happy to do that also.
I have one question for you. You know, having spent your time up there, and we are so thankful that you are the representative that is on that right now, because it is wonderful to have you here too. Sometimes I feel like, because the sessions go so long, we get quiet. And the state is really trying to make sure that we don't. How important is it for people to continue to advocate for funding for special ed, to not get quiet, to not, sit it out, and to continue to keep that pressure on from your perspective?
I think it's incredibly important. We already started to experience in public session people coming forward to talk about specifically special education, kindergarten start age, free and reduced lunch. And so people are coming to voice their opinions to the State Board of Education. Obviously, we do not pass legislation, but knowing what the public is concerned about also informs our pushes in the legislative process. So if you do have an opportunity to come up and participate in public forum at a State Board of Education meeting, I would encourage you to do so. I think it would be wonderful to share the letters that you refer to. They can certainly be delivered as part of public comment. Right now, it seems like it's quiet, but all of a sudden you're going to get to March and there's going to be hearings all over the time, and hearings will get set bam today for 48 hours later. And so it's important for you to find maybe your top 3 things that you want to keep an eye on, and make sure that you have your talking points ready. Even if you can't come literally up to the Capitol, to the Legislative Office Building, or to the Department of Education, electronic testimony can always be provided via email. It's always included in the public record. In addition to my board packet that I get, anyone who sends testimony for public comment by email, we get all of that on the state board and we read it as part of our own packet. So you don't necessarily have to be present to have your voice heard. So I would absolutely encourage you to use that electronic voice if you're not able to be there in person.
Any questions, comments? So, I mean, you heard today, you were here earlier, one of the big problems in Hartford is they pass legislation, don't fund it, or they pass legislation, they don't create a funding bill, or they pass legislation and don't live up to the promise, the formulas and so forth. When you guys are looking at your initiatives, are you looking at the impact it has on, the overall impact on districts? You know, if we promote this, it's going to cost the towns. You know, do you look at it in that sense, or are you just trying to figure out what you think is best for education and kind of running it without maybe any?
I think it, in both sense, it's important to look at what initiatives are. I think as a practicing educator, I bring a lens to all of the discussions that are had about initiatives and thinking through what does this look like if it rolled out in my school district. So a perfect example of that, and this has nothing to do with the State Board of Education, is Connecticut paid leave. And the conversation that I had with your representative out in the hallway, you know, to summarize, some very well-intended legislators put together language about paid sick leave for hourly employees. Hourly employees, my personal opinion, should be allowed to accrue sick leave and to be, like, there's so many families in Stratford that are the parents of my students who, if they don't go to work, they don't get paid. That's a community problem. But the law was written and to ubiquitously cover everyone. And no one really thought through the unintended consequences of how does that play out in a school district. And I would venture to guess when well-intentioned legislators were crafting the language, no one thought to bring educators to the table to ask, what does this look like in your sector? And so I feel that I am in a very good position to bring that lens into discussions at the state board, because that is my lens. I think every day about what does this look like in my school, in my classroom, in my district. How would this play out? What would it look like in reality as opposed to what's on paper?
And to your point, too, as a small business owner, you know, I don't have employees, but as I look at other contractors who I use who have employees, you know, this affects them, and it affects their ability to make a living and to do their jobs. And to your point, well-intended, but so often we see things come out of Hartford that are maybe well-intended on an emotional level, but there's not an intellectual piece that goes behind it. And quite often we see legislation like that hasn't been thought through. But, you know, I'm glad to hear you guys on the state board are, you know, looking into those processes. We do a weekly newsletter, a Board of Ed newsletter, monthly. Well, Board of Ed, you send out this stuff about once a week? Okay. But anyway, we talked about advocacy, and one of the biggest advocacy tools would be the general public. Would you be willing to put a letter together advocating or just maybe informing people on the ways?
How to advocate?
How they could advocate, yeah.
I'd be happy to do that, yes.
Especially on the state level, and obviously intended more for the Board of Ed. And, some people you're gonna have people advocating for different things. Some people are,
Sure.
as always, but it just so people will know what to do, how to do it, and so that we don't go quiet, so that throughout the process.
I'd be
Because
happy to do that.
part of the problem too is at the last days of the legislative session, a flurry of bills come out, nobody even knows what's in there. They're either passing them or they're taking good bills and not passing them because, the chair or whoever it might be, that some of the majority leaders have specific projects they want to get through. So good bills don't get through, bad bills do. Not to say that's the case all the time, but.
And one of the things that I did discover in my very short existence on the state board is that and historically there had not been a lot of communication between the state board's legislative policy committee and the education committee. So I happened to be able to talk with a member of that committee, and I just kind of off the cuff said, like, well, who's your liaison to the department? And that representative had no idea. And so it's something that I want to very much personally focus on to try to open up more lines of communication between the department and the board and our legislators who are writing the bills and passing them.
Systems.
The systems, exactly.
And here in Stratford, we don't have anybody on the education committee, I don't believe, but we have, I think, 5 senators and reps, total 5 or 6. So, I know Ms. Shake was here earlier, Mr. Gresco, Ms. Dancho have come before, but we have other legislators as well. There's an election coming up in February, so we'll have a new
Absolutely,
senator.
and certainly, in order to, we're talking about having a voice, your representative does not have to sit on the education committee in order to have a voice. So there's letters that, like your own, that are being passed around and shared collegially. So maybe I'm not on the education committee and you are, but you and I are also on a different committee together. So we talk about that committee business, but we can also talk about education. So again, I live in the land of when I have been trained to talk with legislators about having an elevator pitch. And so anything, I think that if you want your legislators to be able to have an impact on someone on the education committee, having 3 or 4 talking points to make sure that they understand what are your priorities, and so that when they're in other settings outside of committee meetings, they can have those conversations. Mm-hmm. I think your representatives and your senators can be wonderful advocates, even if they're not on the education committee.
And I was just thinking to that point, maybe you could speak to Parent C. We have that wonderful program here in Stratford, and that's about parent advocacy. So speaking about how to get involved, teaching them how to go up there and advocate in our group.
I'm actually going to speak to them soon, so I will shoot you the date I'm going, and maybe you can just join me.
Sure, that'd be wonderful.
And a pitch to any parents that want to join Parent C. It's a wonderful program.
In a couple weeks.
I think that one of the things that is a shame is that it does seem so daunting to think about as I'm just a parent to go up and talk to the State Board of Education or to talk before a committee. I know I felt that way the very first time I ever went up to the Capitol to advocate on behalf of a bill. And then you realize that I'm a citizen and I have a voice and I have a right to speak to my lawmakers just as everyone does. And as a member of the State Board of Education, I want people to come to public forum. I want to hear what parents, I want to hear what students have to say. And so as much as, yes, I want to hear from parents, I would love the parents to bring their children with them. Because that is how you grow informed citizens, how to advocate for yourself for things.
And we don't know how long this will last, but we are so thankful that it's Stratford that's represented up on the board.
Well, I have a 4-year term appointed by the governor, so we'll see what we make of that.
Well, hopefully they'll keep you around longer.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so closed projects update. It brought to my attention a little while back that there are for a number of different reasons, projects that have not been closed out. And so I started to look into what the process was to close these projects out? Was it us? Was it the town? Was it a lack of communication between the two parties? There's a million reasons why it hasn't, but I wanted to bring this to your attention so you knew what was out there. Over the next couple of months, we're going to be working with the town. I know Susan Hughes is speaking with Dawn. Our superintendent is speaking with the mayor to try and get whatever it is needed to close these projects out. Some of them are open for no reason or just a couple paperwork. Some of them are because there's steps that need to be taken on both sides or one side, whatever it is. But I wanted to just have this as a standing agenda item so we can look to knock as many of these things off between now and the end of our term.
Part of that is I attended the building liaison meeting with the town, and unfortunately, Stratford, we haven't been sending a liaison over. And so that does hinder the communication between both groups. So now Susan Hughes will be attending quarterly and Rich will be attending every month. And that has not been happening. And I will attend when requested. Susan will also be updating this document so that there's transparency and you can see as things close, so that you can watch how we move forward. So really what we're trying to do is just increase the communication and improve the communication so that the building projects can get completed, that you can be notified when they're completed, and that we are being, working with the town by making sure our liaisons are present and working, for those building needs meetings. So that's kind of where this came out of, is just wanting to make sure that we were keeping those lines of communication, we were represented at the liaison meeting, and that the Board of Education understood what was already closed and what was coming to close.
Are one of these columns an amount of reimbursement that we have not received?
I don't have that in front of me, and probably. Yeah. So if it's not closed, we can't get our reimbursement.
Can't get the reimbursement.
Right, so, yes. So, and some of them are the difference that you will see in the grand total of the endorsement. This sheet, green means good. Green means closed, reimbursement happens, okay? Everything else is what we are working towards. But now that we have this, similar to your curriculum document where we're looking for everything, now we can start moving forward one at a time to make sure we are closing these and that you are communicated with that these are closing. Some of them, all the work is done. For example, the solar, right? Those aren't green yet, but those are done. There's little, I's that need to be dotted and T's that need to be crossed, and they need to come in and do some kind of an inspection, but that work is done. So those will all be, closed and finished. So that's what it's important for you to see, is that lots of work's getting done. We just now have a nice document for us to be able to organize and kind of track it and follow it.
And the process is also that the town, there's certain paperwork that the town needs to support to the state. Once they get it back, they would submit it to the board. The board can't sign off on it until the paperwork's all in order. So there's a bunch of steps in between and in the middle, so we're just trying to bring it to light so that we can all work together to resolve. Some of these are on here for, nobody's even sure why, some of the older projects, so the town is doing some background research. They've given me some insight into some of them, but just things that didn't happen or were.
I think they might be the ones in blue. So Susan found some that started before she started the job, and we can't find any information on those. We know they're kind of sitting out there, and they're not closed with this date, but she couldn't dig that up. So we did ask the town to dig deeper into a couple of those projects. And again, just to increase communication and transparency, not to say, Stratford didn't fill out something or the town didn't fill out something. We all need to do our part in order for us to get that reimbursement. So now there's a system set in place where they're accountable to do their part, turn it over to us, we're accountable to do our part. The second they finish a job and fill out all the appropriate paperwork and give it to us, we have 1 year. As a board, we have 1 year to put everything in and close that project for reimbursement. The clock starts when they give us all of the invoices and requested materials.
So some of these are over a year old, so
There's some more than that.
yeah, so does that mean that we are no longer eligible?
Nope, it's that the town has not provided us with all the stuff yet to close it. The second we say it's closed, we have 1 year to finish our part. Okay, so the second we have all the documentation that fill out the spreadsheet, and some of it is, vendors need to provide certain invoices. So it's not even that, the town didn't do something, it's that the vendor has not provided the town that invoice yet.
So this one here, the fourth one down, it says closed.
Yep.
So that was a year from, there's no date or anything on it.
Right.
Okay, so. Okay.
That's,
that
remember I
one.
said blue is
Yep.
things that she can't find?
Yep.
So she's looking into that, and the town's looking into those.
Yeah.
So,
It looks like it was rolled into the bigger project.
and it may have been, right? We just don't have the documentation or the details yet, so she didn't want to leave it out there. She wanted to say, hey, I still need some more stuff on this.
So I just, again, I just wanted to make sure that the town had completed their part and we didn't do our thing because we didn't know. And I wanted to make sure that the other way around, so. But it is the hope that we can get some of these resolved, closed out, get them off the town's book. If there's something we can do a little more proactively to help it happen, then we will obviously do that and allow the town to get the reimbursement.
And they will be reviewed monthly and reshared with you, so you'll start to see it.
And that's through which committee?
That is the building needs.
Are you on that one?
I'm the representative. For a number of reasons, I hadn't gone yet, but, yeah. So hopefully we are going to be improving the communications.
It was my first time attending it last time.
No, I mean, you referenced liaison, and it made me think, like one option, an opportunity for those things to be shared, right, so that communication is transparent and open to all, is if that were shared through the actual liaison committee. But that has not met in 10 months. So those are some things, right, so I think it's absolutely necessary and important for Mr. Ruggiero or Susan Hughes to have appearances at those building needs committee meetings. However, I also think it would be maybe more communicative and transparent and have more of an open dialogue with the majority of the board, not just individual people, if those Board of Education liaison committees actually occurred.
Yeah, the building needs liaison committee has been meeting. It just, Rich has not been attending. So I just corrected that and I asked him to please attend every month and asked him to bring Susan quarterly. So that one has been meeting, we just haven't been there.
Any other questions? All right. So personnel, I look for motion to approve the personnel document as presented. Moved by Mr. Kennedy. I'll second it. Any discussion?
Yes. On page 13, there was a Title I tutor assigned for the Assumption School. I don't believe we have an Assumption School, so I'm just wondering.
What?
Yeah, right, but it's capital school, so.
What number is that?
Page 13, number 2 under section I.
Do you want me to coordinate that?
Yeah, we do provide a tutor to Assumption School, and we did it last year as well under a grant. You may be able to provide.
Yep, so just so you understand, part of the entitlement grant, same with IDA, a portion of this goes to those private schools, Assumption, St. Mark's, St. James. They get a portion of this funding, it is required, that is what they are doing with their portion of the funding. That's a process, and I'm happy to send you kind of the information on it, but that is required for those grants. They're allocated a certain amount. When I get my IDEA money, there's a chunk that is specific.
Is that similar to our responsibilities of providing the nurses to St. Mark's, St. James?
It's just part of how the legislation works.
So that has to go through our payroll?
Yeah. Well, it's coming out
Because
of our
it's our
federal
grant.
money, so.
So even to a private Catholic school outside of our town? I mean, I understand St. James and St. Mark's are within our.
We get told who we have to fund for, and that's one of them.
Even if we have no students there?
Yeah.
Love the state.
It's a portion of your grant allocation, and it's the title money and the IDA money.
So this person is on our payroll now
Yes.
because it's,
There's an SLP.
we can't
that
just
goes
give
over
them the
St.
money and it
Mark's
goes on their
James.
payroll?
No. And just no different, if they chose to say they chose to spend their money on computers, Chromebooks, right, that's what they're gonna spend their money on. You meet, you have agreement meetings, we sit, we talk about what you wanna spend your money on, You spend your money on that, but every piece of equipment that goes over there says property of Stratford Board of Ed. Every service that's provided stays on your books. Whether it is a stuff or a human, whatever they decided to spend their allotted money on stays on our books. And if, something ever happened, that equipment will come back to us.
And these are federal guidelines?
This is part of the grants, yep.
Okay. How does that work for benefits, for possible workers' comp, for all
Just depends on how we allocate the services. So for example, the SLP that I send over is a contracted SLP. So
I've just never seen that. Have you seen this before?
benefits. It's always been on there. They've always had a tutor.
It's not full-time.
It's not. It's usually
Few
part-time.
hours.
They have X dollars to spend. So let's say with IDEA, the Catholic schools have $15,000 total. Okay, they split that based on a formula and calculation. They split it up between them. I call one school says we would like some speech and language support, right? I send over a contracted speech and language support up to the amount that they get allocated. So if they got $6,000 of that dollars, they get help only until that is spent. If they choose to purchase equipment, we purchase that equipment, but only up to the allocation that's spent. So it's typically part-time staff. Usually we just contract and send somebody over. Sometimes we have the ability, or we want to split a position. If we need that tutor too, then we'll do a full-time tutor.
Are all towns and cities responsible for this?
Yes. I'm happy to send you this.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about this, because this is something that's never come up
It's
before.
just part of it. It's part of the grants. You can actually see it in the IDA application. I'm sure you can in the title application. That comes out of teaching and learning, not me, but I'm sure exactly the same.
I'd love to see that.
Any other questions, comments?
I had another question, actually, on the same page, under non-union number 2. It says it's a budgeted new position. I don't recall it ever being in our budget.
Do you want to speak to that?
Human Resources Secretary?
I'm not sure how it was reflected in the budget last year, but I do know we have the same number of budgeted positions this year that we did last year, once in a grant.
They just filled the position.
It's been open.
I'm just trying to remember it being in there because I know it was like a position that was eliminated in budgets years ago, and now it's there, and I don't remember it being there, but I can go back and look.
Yeah.
Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Overnight field, there are no budget transfers, so we're going to number 5. The overnight field trip request coming out of curriculum committee. Does somebody from curriculum? Mr. Kenny?
Yep, so the dance team, it will give an opportunity for them to compete at the UDA National Dance Team Championship in Orlando, Florida. And this would be the first time from Stratford that they would be able to compete. It would give the students an opportunity to compete at a national level versus regional competitions that they attended in Connecticut. The competition will also be live streamed, so parents and families can watch from home, and there are 12 dance team members attending along with a dance coach and 9 parent volunteers. The team has been fundraising since the summer, and we're able to cover approximately half the cost for the trip. The students will also have an opportunity to visit Disneyland parks. And the team can take their experience and feedback from the higher level competition back to the SWC competition in Connecticut, which is right after nationals. And the trip is January 30th to February 2nd.
So like Friday.
Gonna leave Thursday.
Thursday after school.
So this was, yeah, it's a good opportunity. It's a great opportunity. All the details are in the back of the application.
Would you like to make a motion to
I
approve?
would like to make a motion to approve this.
Motion approved by Mr. Kennedy. Second? I will second. I'll second it. Any discussion? Mr. Cormier?
I have quite a few questions on this. So they presented to you to curriculum committee last week.
January, yeah.
So looking through it, it looks like the trip was planned back late summer up through October. It was presented to curriculum last week. It's an out-of-state trip that should be presented 3 months in advance to us. It's presented on an out-of-date form, which we updated, I believe, early fall, which we updated. I don't remember when we did it, but I know I was on the committee that updated the policy. In looking through it, that's my first concern. My second concern, there's a chaperone discrepancy. On the first page, it says, on the first page, there's a coach and some parents. But on the third page, I believe, it says 2 coaches and some parents. But the parents are not identified. I'm curious, who are the parents that are chaperoning? Have they been background checked on Raptor? Why wasn't the authorization sought out when they started planning the trip? When the first payment was expected on October 1st, and it was only presented to curriculum last week. I'm a little concerned, and I'm not saying I'm concerned that the parents aren't background checked, but as a parent, I don't have a child going on this trip, but I would be very concerned with the lack of information on this trip.
I can assure you that all parents are background checked.
Okay.
To be a chaperone, that 100% happens.
This has no information on it.
Yep, I can definitely bring your concerns back to Mr. Delapiano, to let him know that you have concerns.
Specifically the timing.
It's Thursday, it's Monday night, and the trip's Thursday.
I understand.
Mr. Delapiano is on the policy committee, and he signed off on this trip. He signed off. He signed off pushing the new policy, the revised policy last year.
The dates didn't change a little bit. It was still 3 months from this policy
Right.
and formal.
Yeah.
Well, this is
Yeah. Time frame didn't.
I have significant concerns. I don't ever want our students to be penalized for a lack of adult forethought and appropriate policy.
I want the kids to go. I absolutely.
Yep. As you can see, my signature is not on this either.
I see that, and I also noticed that the assistant superintendent's signatures are not on it
We need to
either.
implement those policies. So it's here to you, knowing they did not follow the procedures or the policies. I'm going to advocate that we support the students and allow them to go. I'm going to tell you I will address our administration on this, but I do need the board to approve this before my signature would go on this, because they did not follow policies or procedures.
So to your point, Ms. Borges, I completely agree. These children should not be punished. I mean, they raised the money, they worked hard, and they earned this, and they deserve this. However, I think this goes back to your administration, it goes back to the coach, it goes back to the athletic director. Like, all of those 3 adults had the opportunity to do this correctly.
Yep, and I'm in full agreement. But I also, like I said, I know these kids have worked hard.
I've like looking at this over the weekend. I want them to go, and if we're going to go to vote on this, I would vote on this a yes, contingent that an updated application is sent to the board by end of day Wednesday with the
Proper information.
the things I outlined.
And I
Is
will
that-
also
this is-
address all of
And I think we have a new waiver as well, that should be.
Because there's the waiver because of the
The liability.
It needs to be updated on our current form.
which has the waiver for the amusement park.
It needs to be updated on our current form, and I need to address the administration. Your big decision is about whether or not you're okay with the students to go. I will then take part in making sure it's on an updated form and getting that to you ASAP by tomorrow afternoon. As as well as addressing the
I want them to go, it's 12,
need
it's 12.
to follow the policy.
I want them to go, it's 12 people, and they're gonna, if they can,
And so do I.
I know it can happen, and
Yeah.
The crazy part, though, is I can't call a special meeting to approve this at a later date because the time frame, we don't have the time to do it, you know?
So-
I could, but I'd have to call it today that we met on Wednesday, but I'm
So
not
my
gonna do
hope
that.
is you will approve it contingent on a list of things that I have to get to you by such a time tomorrow.
So, all right. And let me see if I can state this. So I will look for a motion to approve the application pending superintendent's verification of all appropriate, appropriate and updated
Forms.
documentation,
Mhm.
that the adults involved will be spoken to and reprimanded, and that a letter will go out to the entire staff stating or at least referring to the new policy regarding overnight. And in the future, if the rules aren't followed, the trip will be denied.
Okay, do those things. You guys will get an email from Teresa with the updated documents tomorrow. I would say by noontime.
I was looking for a motion, would you?
I will make that motion, I guess.
Mr. Cormier make it, Ms. Carol Fabian will second it. Any other discussion?
Well, I'm really surprised at Stratford High because they went through the process for Hawaii, and probably a year in advance, they started the process the right way, so. But I agree, don't penalize the kids.
I see, are any of the parents here for this trip, or is there, were you involved in the planning of this, or are you just here?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I'm
Because typically too, somebody comes and pitches it to us as well. I mean, maybe they did a curriculum, I don't know, but.
This didn't, nothing, this came to me on January 6th.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, but yeah, and the letter to the staff should be very clear, and the discussion with the administrator should be very pointed, that this is,
The letter to the staff, we will all be CC'd on, so you will see that, and I will take care of my administration.
I'll make sure they know this is unacceptable. For, not for our concerns, but for the safety of the kids. You know, because
There's policies that are supposed to be implemented for a reason.
And we spent a lot of time making sure that everything was, we covered all the bases to make sure our kids were going to be safe.
And especially
it was,
I was
it was
prepared to
circumvented.
hear this tonight, and I
It
was
was
also prepared to advocate for the kids.
And especially as Mr. Cormier pointed out, one of the signatories on this document is actually on the policy committee that crafted the new policy. So, anyway, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Hopefully they'll be better chaperones then.
Residency, do we have any kind of report there? or- Okay.
Teresa, do we have any updates for residency?
Not really any updates
You
from
skipped
what you
over,
gave the last time. We do have two
Oh,
hearings
sorry.
that will be coming up.
Oh, yeah, I did give you a report last time, right?
Yeah.
So the only update are that, on that report, we have the hearings coming up.
All right, and I made a mistake, I skipped over 6 because we were talking about policy, but
Oh.
policy 5117 is in the back of our agenda. This is just a reflection of our new redistricting policy. Hoping everybody had a chance to read through it. And I don't know, I know Ms. Borges, you had some input into some of it. I don't know if you want to give us any updates, but basically this is just a update referencing our new redistricting policy.
Yep, I brought this to the policy committee at the last policy committee meeting, because we have to be in alignment with redistricting, and so I put this in here and put forward my recommended and suggested changes and adaptions to reflect the new redistricting plan, as well as to reflect the process for administrative placements, and to encumber the pieces that the board had voted on to amend the redistricting plan. So I wanted to make sure that the changes you voted on that veered off scenario 1, like 5th graders being allowed to stay, high school students, being able to stay, the reoccurring Franklin Chapel Flex Zone being allowed to apply for a lottery. I wanted to make sure that everything was reflected in there, as some of you will be flipping over, and you'll have a new superintendent, so I wanted to make sure there was a policy that clearly aligned with the redistricting plan. So this was the recommendation I brought to the policy committee, who voted unanimously to send it forward to you.
Mr. O'Brien, anything further? I don't think you were there, Mr. O'Brien.
I think we're ready to adopt.
Okay. So this is a motion then to accept, I would look for a motion to accept this as a first read.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. O'Brien,
Second.
second by Ms. Bedell. Any discussion?
I have a few things.
Okay.
Excuse me. Under 1, on page 24 down the bottom, the high school students, grades 9 through 11, 2024 to 2025. On page 24
The first page of it.
of the policy. I believe it should say current high school students, grades 9 through 11. If you turn the page, it says current, but when you read number 2, it's listed as current 5th grade students. So I think we should add the word current before the high school.
Okay.
That's
I
one.
believe Mr. Henry suggested that at the policy meeting, and I
Okay.
shut him down. But now that we get
Well,
a second
we're on
person,
the
I will
same
happily
page.
put in
Okay.
the current.
Thank you. The second thing is, how is this going to be determined, and how are parents going to decide, and when does it need to be determined by? So if it's, the way it's listed is, current students may choose to stay at their high school until graduation. I have an issue with the may, because are we going to say they can decide that up until the day they start?
We already
Is there a
said that.
cutout?
So, when you guys voted on the changes, we have to set, in order for us to do our budget, we need to know the number of students in each school. So a letter already went home to families that I believe I shared with you as well, that delineated that families had until February 1st if they did not want to stay. So right now, we're assuming high school students will want to stay at their current high school. If they don't, or if they do, they are notifying their building principal by February 1st.
I understand all that, but it should be listed here, because this is a policy that we're enacting,
That's a
so we
procedure.
need to be
It's a
clear.
one-time.
One, it's a one-time thing, and two, this is a policy. The procedure is how I implement this policy.
So the only thing I would say to that, I think maybe this is where Angela Powers would be that, we might want to say that once a child chooses to stay, and I don't think we're calling it waivers, but once a child chooses to stay, that will be their school until the end of their waiver period. So if a 9th grader says, I'm staying at Stratford High, I'm not going to Bunnell, from 10 to 12, you're at Stratford High, you don't get to switch. The same with a 5th grader who says, I'm going to stay in 6th grade, that's your school to the end of that school year. You don't, mid-year, you don't get to say, now I want to go with my other friends, and, And I think that's maybe what you were saying, but.
Well, the reason I bring this up is because we're writing it as may choose, but it doesn't have anything behind it. So they may choose it, but when do they choose it? I know you're saying that email, but we're putting in a policy that's saying they may choose it and not determining when that is. That's my only point on that one. So I think we need to have something written there on that. And then on the Lordship Flex Zone. Okay, I've received some feedback from the public about this, and I'm confused about it, so I want to make sure I have this correct. So if they're in the Lordship Flex Zone, and they're in 8th grade right now, they're going to go to their new school. They're going to stay at Stratford High.
Yes.
So when does that change?
So the Lordship Flex Zone is for this incoming group of 6th graders. Okay, so we didn't retroact at everybody, or that would send way too many kids to Flood all at once. Right? The point of this was to balance Flood and Worcester over the next couple of years. So it's starting with this 6th grade group. If you are currently a Flex Zone person at Worcester, you are staying at Worcester. If you are a 6th grader at Lordship right now who lives in that Flex Zone, the 25 students we identified, you are going to Flood. The next 6th grade, you are going to Flood. We are not retroacting the current middle school kids because that would put 100 more kids at Flood, and we don't want that. That wasn't the point of it. The point was to even out Flood and Worcester's numbers, starting with your 6th grade Flex Zone students.
And it does say the Lordship Flex Zone, I know that's what we call it, but it's a Flex Zone
For the
because
elementary
it's
schools.
Lordship,
Yeah.
and not.
It is moving elementary school only, starting with 6th grade. If you were to enact that for more kids, you would really make an imbalance.
So then I have some questions because I've been contacted by many people who live in that Lordship Flex Zone, and their child is at Johnson House, and they received a letter saying that they are being sent to Lordship. So,
For next year.
right, but I thought that was just going to affect for 6th graders.
The Lordship Flex Zone right here.
So now, because I'm just, right, but in that redistricting breakdown and vote and discussion.
Scenario one.
It was in scenario 1, it was never made clear or discussed that any child living in the Lordship Flex Zone who's currently at Johnson House would be shifted to Lordship.
I definitely understood it that way. And I thought that SLAM presented it that way very clearly. If you were in the Lordship Flex Zone, in order for Lordship to have the 200 students in the redistricting and fill their fill rate, you in that Flex Zone were heading to Lordship. We also then delineated this one, which is specifically about increasing enrollment at Flood and Benell. That is what the Lordship Flex Zone amendment is in, and that is for current 6th graders to change their pathway if you were in that Flex Zone. But always from day one, SLAM presented that Lordship Flex Zone as the students that would be attending, the Johnson area students that would be attending Lordship.
But then why wouldn't they just become Lordship? Why is it the Flex Zone? I understood it as it's gonna help balance when we need to. So new coming enrollment, administrative placements, when it's needed, then it would be balanced that way. It was never proposed as that's now Lordship. Otherwise it would just be called Lordship.
So it's not called Lordship because Lordship, if all of the children who actually lived in Lordship decided to go to Lordship, that Flex Zone wouldn't work. So because of the zone created, though the students may go to private schools or somewhere else, they had to be accounted for because they could go to our public school. So technically, Jill, if they all attended, some of the students within that Lordship Flex Zone now would go to Johnson because there wouldn't be enough room for everybody. So it is a Flex Zone based on the number of community enrollment of Lordship students. But right now, we don't have the enrollment, so the entire group is going.
That wasn't how it was proposed. You could go back to the videos and watch the proposal, but that was not how he proposed it. He said it was to balance new enrollments and transfers in, and when it wasn't ever, we're gonna take the students that are currently at Johnson and move them if they're in the Lordship Flex Zone to balance Lordship currently. It was for future.
Just for reference, they're also taking students that are currently at Lordship that are outside of the Lordship Flex Zone and moving them to Johnson.
I know.
So it's going both ways. It's
No,
not-
I understand.
Okay.
It just wasn't proposed that way, so parents were very confused when they were told that now they're gonna be moved.
Well, we have always said from the beginning that 80 students would be leaving Johnson. That's part of the 80 students leaving Johnson. And that we are filling Lordship to fill capacity because they are underfilled right now. So the policy, again, or the recommendation from SLAM for scenario 1 was to balance our school a bit. And that's part of the way they're doing it. And again, if everybody enrolled, then some of that Flex Zone would go back to Johnson. But right now, the goal was to have Lordship at a little over 200 students to have the appropriate fill rate and to reduce the number of students that are currently in Johnson so that they were no longer overloaded.
Okay, and then I watched the policy committee meeting, and so my last point would be on this Chapel satellite zone. You were talking about the risk and how if they apply for the waiver and they get accepted for the waiver, but somebody else moves into the neighborhood and has zoned that neighborhood, then they would have to go back to Chapel even after they receive the waiver. That's not communicated here. Is that going to be communicated for the waiver policy?
It's going to be on the application.
I think what you had said though, once a kid is wavered into Franklin, that's their school.
For the year, but they have to put the waiver in each year for the lottery. Because if a new student moves in and there's no longer room, that's the risk you're taking, is that if there's no longer room, I'm not going to move a Franklin district child for someone who's outside of the district. But that's your school for the year. And so the 2 requests I've already received via email. I said you need to wait until the policy goes through, but I am letting you know that if you are putting this in for the lottery to be approved, that it is year by year, which technically our waivers were year by year anyway.
Right, but I think that's a huge risk and a big disruption to children, and that should be laid out clearly in this policy.
How do you guys want to
Because
say it?
as a,
So if we just said waiver approvals will be based on the space availability and conducted via a lottery system on a year-to-year
On an
renewal.
annual basis.
Year-to-year renewal
However you want it
basis.
in there is fine with me.
I mean, is that kind of address it?
That's it is a disruption, but that's the parents' decision,
right, but they
you know?
need to, it needs to be clear to the parents that that's the risk they're taking, and as it is explained here, it does not make them clear that they're taking that risk.
Well, I
each
did
year.
put each school year.
So
I said-
if we did waiver approvals will be based on the space availability and conducted via lottery system on a year-to-year renewal basis, or an annual renewal basis, either way.
And again, in the top one, I did say needs to be by August 15th each school year.
That's a question. So what if someone, it's a transient neighborhood, someone moves in mid-year and now the class size is too high? You're just going to have both of them at the school, or you move the student mid-year or for that year? So that you just go over the capacity?
And that might be the case in any school.
It could be the case in any school. But, you know, the goal is to not do that. And right now, you know, they're not near their capacity, Joe, so it shouldn't be an issue. They have one class that's close to capacity. Yeah, so that's.
I just want to make sure that they don't have
Yeah.
the mid-year disruption.
So do you guys think you need a whole nother bullet, or should, at the end of the second bullet, waiver approvals will be based on space availability and conducted via lottery?
On an annual basis.
On an annual basis?
On an annual renewal basis.
Yeah, I think renewal needs to be in
On
there.
an annual renewal basis.
And then, so, and then under Lordship Flex Zone, we should probably say elementary students in Lordship.
Sure. How about starting with grade 6 of the 25-26 school year? Something, or actually, grade 6.
Well, it says elementary schools in Lordship 24-25 will follow that.
And subsequent years.
And subsequent years, yeah.
That's why I thought it was clear that it's only those elementary students, but you guys think I need to write it in a more clear way?
But just elementary lets them know, just to Jill's point, that the, you know, the Worcester kids in that will,
This is
or vice
only
versa.
elementary students.
And then we should also probably say, once they're finished, are we calling these waivers, or are we calling these exemptions?
These are exemptions.
Okay.
This is the board exemptions. that you
Okay,
get.
so once an exempted decision is made, the child will stay in that school until the end of that.
School year.
Well, no, because if it's the high school, they stay in high school to the end. Through the end of that exemption period.
Are you still on Lordship, or are you down back?
No, maybe just on an optional provision. Once a waiver, or once an exempted decision is made, the student shall stay in the exempted school
Until graduation.
until the end of that exempted period.
That's not true.
Not
That
true,
would Franklin.
because Franklin is,
That's not.
and then I was
Not
just
true.
reading this,
Yeah.
on the chapel on number 4, it says no waivers, or waivers approval, and then below it on 1, no waivers. So it's contradicting
I
itself.
think it should say placement approvals,
Exemption approvals.
exemption approvals. What do you guys like better, exemption or placement?
Well, we're referring to it as exemptions and waivers, so let's
Exemption.
keep the language.
Exemptions shall stay, well, once an exemption is made, the student will stay throughout the exemption period.
Exemptions will be based on space availability and conducted via lottery system on an annual basis.
Well, but if it's an exemption period, it does talk about the exemption period for Franklin as well. We've added that annual basis. Right, there's a language up above it that says that exemption period is for 1 year and redone on an annual basis, so it covers that. So we say, you know, the other exemption periods, the fifth graders, the high school kids, once they pick a school, once a kid decides to go into the high school, which is his exemption, then it stays throughout the exemption period, which would be till the end of his high school. that clearly.
It does. I don't know if that's reasonable, and I'll explain to you why. So I think that sometimes, like some of the high school kids may choose to stay at their current high school, and our year comes to an end. And it was too hard for them to travel that distance, and they prefer to now go to their base school. What is the problem with them switching over the summer? I understand like switching during the school year is not a good idea, but if you actually live in the neighborhood of Bunnell and you are choosing to stay at Stratford High, I need you to stay for the duration of that year. But it's okay with me if you were to move at the end of that year to your base school. Because technically the evaluation was done based on that. Do I think many kids will want to do that? No. But if they came to me and asked to go to their base school, I don't feel like if, mid-year I might question it. But during the summer, after I've, allotted staff and move people, I don't know that that's necessarily what you want to say. That you have to stay until you graduate.
So once an exemption is made, that exemption must stay in place for the duration of the school year?
That's what I feel, right? And that's the same for Franklin, right? If you do the exemption and you get it for the year. And then
Well, unless they have one of these other things down the bottom that we.
these are administrative placements, yeah.
I know, so then that would.
But that means you gotta sit with the superintendent, right? This is all
Okay.
stuff you can do
Those
without
are
the
optional,
superintendent.
yeah, optional provisions anyway.
That exemption must stay in place.
For the duration of the school year.
I have a question about.
That exemption must be honored for the duration of the school year.
No, but that would be just honored by the staff. Honored would mean the staff must keep it. But if it must stay in place, then parents can't, I don't want to do this year.
I have a question about this, the high school staying in place, but then they have the option to go to the other school. Is the transportation going to be provided? And when we move up our next year, how is that going to work? Because we're going to be busing kids that are in certain districts to different schools. It's going to
So
create a.
when you guys voted originally to, have some of these, so I tried the best I could to put the language of what you voted in for the exemptions into this. And again, I will implement any policy you put forward. This was what I'm sending to you for your first read for the recommendation. When that was put forward, my understanding was if we are allowing you to stay at a school and we are currently providing you transportation, then you continue to get that for the high schools.
I'm sorry, I'm just asking if he's warm. No.
Yes.
I think we're all warm.
Throw a couple.
That would be really, so yeah, that would be essentially.
Okay, but what about the student that picks to go to the other school?
Do they go back to their base school?
Yeah.
They get whatever they're allotted to at their base school.
So
if they're 2 miles
we
away.
might be doing double busing for the same neighborhood.
Probably not, because the majority of your high school busing goes to Bunnell. Stratford High actually has very few buses, so probably not.
They analyzed the
They
transportation
did
too,
analyze
and
the
the transportation was actually less, so.
So I don't see that as a problem.
That was before we switched.
Before we switched, but next year, regardless, it's going to go up because we're moving in the ninth graders, the new ninth graders, who are coming from a different neighborhood than what's currently there. I get what you're saying, that Stratford High is more,
Localized.
yeah, neighborhood, but even for Bunnell, we're gonna be moving more kids there.
There's still not, though, when you look at their enrollment numbers, there's not more kids there. It's
Okay.
not.
The reason
it's
why
gonna take
we
multiple
changed
years.
the reason why we changed whatever the lordship flex homes, so they would have the same amount of numbers, same amount of kids, because they originally did it on square footage allocation and put more kids, I think, in Stratford High, but the resources in both schools are equal. They have the same staff, same numbers, so that's why we switched that. And actually, it was Mr. Grigas' suggestion, and he picked up more of a burden, gets more kids, but it was his suggestion and felt it was more
No,
fair.
I know, I'm just thinking
to-
about the
to-
busing. How are those kids gonna get there? It's gonna be an increase of some.
Actually, according to Pam, Susan Hughes, and Slam, there's not going to be an increase to our busing. This should potentially give us a little bit of busing savings. If it all works out and everything goes in, I may come to you as a policy committee first and say, hey, now that we have a little bit of savings in busing, would you like to reduce those lines? Because right now, we have kids that have to walk 2 miles.
Yeah, I would definitely, we had talked about that, shrinking that circle, that radius.
Right.
But the busing is not part of this policy. I I mean, it's a good conversation and maybe from.
No, I just was wondering with this 9th grade moving into the, I was just trying to figure out how that all,
According to
and
this
if
handbook,
we're
it's not gonna.
optional, so
Yeah.
this option is here.
And the high schools, if you remember, have the same number of students, it's really a wash, right? And if they choose to stay, it's the same number of students. So you're not seeing, we're definitely balancing our middle schools better. Our high schools are still imbalanced. Stratford High still has 100 plus more kids than Vanilla, at least for the next 2 years.
Until that washes out.
Right.
Washes through the middle
Until
schools.
the middle schools get through their 2 years of making this a little more balanced.
Right.
So with Greg taking on the additional 25 kids and then 16 the following year, rather than other kids move in, we're getting closer, right? So now his classes will now get closer and he will funnel into Vanell, hopefully then balancing off that 100 kids that Stratford High is currently absorbing. And from my understanding right now, high school kids are choosing to stay at their current schools, which I totally suspect is that.
All right, any other comments? So,
Hold on,
oh,
I have more. Just when we drop down to the optional provisions, before we go on to a second renewal, but can we be provided with just an updated copy of the Title IX violations, the confirmed acts of bullying policy, so that we can make sure that those are clear as to why, if that's going to be the thing. The other thing is with the medical needs, so I fully support that, and I think that was kind of the point I was making when I made the amendment for children of IEPs and 504s to have that option, because they're not that all students with an IEP or 504 need this exception, but in those rare cases where there is that medical. So is this kind of
Cover that.
to cover that?
So again, if you have an IEP, I may place you somewhere via your IEP, totally different process.
Right.
But there are many students that we have that have medical needs that don't have an IEP. They have a medical need through a 504, right? Which doesn't technically do placements that way. So this is really to talk about a whole bunch of different things that could be medical needs, and I can give you some examples. Some of our schools are far more accessible, handicap accessible for, say, a student who's in a wheelchair. We have now seen an influx of students who are trying to navigate with wheelchairs, right? We also have a larger amount of students that are needing nursing support. That's a funding issue within the district. So if we have students that we can share a nurse, that is important for us to be able to do. We have students that have just certain diagnosed medical needs that require a type of attention that we don't want to be disruptive to. So this is an opportunity for, and again, I will make people produce real medical documentation, right? To sit down and say, I would like to sit with the superintendent and request an administrative placement based on medical need. That meeting will be set up, and this will be an administrative placement based on medical need. So I really did take to heart what you said, Jill, and although Lisa, sorry, it's past my bedtime. Although I don't agree with making it about IEPs, because I think IEPs are a totally separate process from a policy, I do agree that there are some medical needs that need to be addressed, and there needs to be an opportunity for parents to be able to sit with the superintendent, part of that superintendent is advocate for that and have an administrative placement. So that's why I put that in there. And again, you guys are welcome to adjust these. These are my suggestions that I think are concrete. As far as your Title IX policy, you're now following the 2020 policy. It's updated on our website. I'll send you another copy. And as far as your confirmed acts of bullying policy, we have a bullying policy. It is updated. It is in alignment with the state's requirements, and we have a process. So if a child is being bullied and they make a request for a bullying investigation, a full investigation is done. At the end of that, it is either a confirmed or an unconfirmed act of bullying, and those are all documented.
Have we updated the bullying policy? The last one I saw is 2011.
Safe school climate policy, it's in
Okay.
there.
All right, got it.
I don't know the exact date, but it was later than 2011, because the state handled it.
So then maybe it should be written as, with not the bullying policy, but the safe school, because I read a policy in Head Binder that said bullying policy, so. And that was 2011, so I don't, like Mr. Piazza was saying earlier, there's multiple and some are outdated.
So and maybe you want to help me word this better, so it says verified incidents of bullying under the districts and state policy. Our district and state policy is listed as the Safe School Climate Policy, but the act has to be a verified act of bullying, right? Because then any parent could come to
There's
me
a
and say.
bullying procedure, yes.
Yes.
There's a bullying procedure.
Yeah, and so it's a confirmed act of bullying following our district policy, which you could update and change at any time.
So how soon do you need this in place?
Well, I mean,
Should we,
Listen, it has to be in place for next year. I mean, the sooner you make it in
The
place for
sooner-
me, the sooner I can communicate with families on how to request things they need.
and should we send it back to policy review
No.
just for, or is it, or has to as amended?
Can I make these changes and send it, because this is a first read, right?
Yeah. So I'm gonna make a motion to amend for now, to include 5117B, Lordship Flex Zone, elementary schools, elementary students in Lordship Flex Zone, finish the sentence. And then under Chapel's satellite zone, the second sentence, waiver approvals will be based on space availability and conducted via a lottery system on a annual renewal basis. And then at the bottom, under optional provisions, once an exemption is made, that exemption must stay in place for the duration of the school year.
And the Safe School Climate Policy. So confirmed acts of bullying, verified incidents of bullying under the district and state's Safe School Climate Policy. It's also called the Safe School Climate
Safe
Policy of the state.
School climate policy.
It's a verified act of bullying under the Safe School Climate Policy.
So I would make a motion to amend this, this policy. And under, 517A, under redistricting adjustments, it should say number 1 at the bottom, it should say current high school students. So,
Teresa, did you get all those? Yes. Okay, I thought I did, but just in case, I want to make sure someone else did.
so that would be my amendment, my motion to amend.
Second.
Second by Ms. Padal, any discussion?
Another question on the medical leave.
Well, before we get there, we're voting on the amendment, so. And you can bring that up after. So there's a motion on the floor, it's been seconded, and the discussion would be on the amendments.
For the first read.
Yep. And then after the amendment, we can talk about, so, just to, so, I'll just call for a roll vote. Ms. Scarlett?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Padal?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mr. Cormier?
Yes.
Ms. D'Angelo Powers?
Yes.
The chair votes yes. So the amendments have been accepted. Now, would you like to talk about other parts that you might want to amend?
Just a question really on the medical needs. Because I know we have all received multiple emails regarding families that have children or a child with medical needs. How will we be handling when there's multiple children in a household? Are we dividing a family into different schools?
Unless you want to, again, update your entire policy. So if a child is going to our ABA program, the sibling is still going to their base school. If you start to say that a kid has a medical need and so we should make the whole family allowed to stay, you're going to skew your fill rates. So right now, how I am anticipating this policy is we will meet the medical need of your child. If you have a typical child, and that typical child needs to, and I had a family come in and say to me, I just need my kid with my medical need to stay. I understand my other kid has to go. They'll go because they are a typical child who can do this, but this specific child has a significant medical need, and that would be completely impactful. We have kids in dual language programs whose siblings are in other schools. We have kids in special ed programs whose siblings are in other schools. I don't recommend you as a board to make accommodations for entire families. That family may have 5 children in it. It might not be just a sibling. We have families that have multiple children. I think we meet the needs of each kid in a public education, and if you have a child with a medical need, we meet that child's medical need. That's my recommendation. recommendation. And again, you guys, you know I have to implement whatever policy you put in. That's my recommendation. And it aligns with what we do for our other programs.
And to your point, if we waiver a kid into a school, we might have to move the other 4 kids over to that school.
Right.
So, it's just, yeah.
I also think it calls a windfall of, and it's hard conversations. I mean, I hate turning over the ABA parents and saying the child has to go, or a PDLC parent saying the sibling has to go to another school. But I have 128 students, and if everybody got to take their siblings with them, I'm significantly going to skew our bill rates. Nor have I ever seen another district do that. I mean, we have plenty of administrators here who have children in other districts who have 2 kids, and if their child needs a special program in the school, the other child is still going to their school. Hard, but I think it's consistent.
Any other discussion? So I'd look for a motion to approve as a first read as amended.
Oh, you just did that.
Oh, I amended it, but now I have to.
Oh, now you have to approve
It's
as a
just
read.
a procedural nonsense. Motion to approve as amended.
Second.
As a first read. Second, I made the motion, second by Mr. O'Brien. Ms. Scarfabian?
Yes?
Mr. O'Brien?
Yes.
Mr. Dow?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy? Yes. Mr. Corner?
Yes.
Mr. Ian Powers?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, passed unanimously. And we will take that up at our next board meeting. We talked about residency, we have no committee assignment appointments, so curriculum committee.
Yep, so you heard a couple of the updates. The field trip was discussed. You mentioned about the curriculum revisions, and we had a couple presentations, one by Sam Rosenberg, and she presented a curriculum called Computer Science Discovering course for 7th grade, and this course falls under Career Technical Education, Technology Pathway, and Computer Science Discoveries is an introductory computer science course that empowers students to create authentic artifacts and engage with computer science as a medium for creativity, communication, problem solving, and fun. Students explore various topics in computer science, including programming and physical computing, web development, design, and data. And Sam had worked on this draft for the curriculum over the summer. She contacted the state and looked at other districts' curriculum, and the STE standards and training is embedded in this curriculum. The district has right now has two new computer science teachers this year, and they are using this curriculum and are making recommendations for the revisions, and then they will come back to us and to the committee with the final version, which will be presented again to you guys for final recommendation. And then they also presented on the Into literature, and things are going good, positive feedback. So I don't know if you have anything to add to the Into literature.
Well, they talked about the Into Literature is the 6th grade is using that, but it's also being piloted in the middle school as it's the next version of the Into Reading, the secondary level.
Anything else? Ms. Bedell, Finance.
Finance just met right before this meeting, gearing up for budget season. Budget presentation, superintendent's budget presentation will be this coming Monday, February 3rd at 6:30. Following that, we'll have workshops on Wednesday, February 5th, Monday, February 10th, Wednesday, February 12th, all starting at 6:30. And then back to our regular board meeting on Monday, February 24th, and hopefully a vote to go forward to the
Last question.
Question. School planning, we will be meeting on February 6th to start the discussion on the capital improvement plan. Liaison town committee did not meet. Mr. O'Brien, policy?
As I've said before, a thoughtful, hardworking committee that does all their work away from the monthly meetings and then brings it to a 1-hour monthly meeting where we kind of brainstorm. Chris, thanks for all you do away from the meetings.
That's it. Mr. Farmer, anything on that?
No, I missed the last meeting. I had a walked out of the meeting.
Athletic review, Mr. Kennedy.
We did not lack quorum this month, to reschedule.
Bylaws committee, we met. Teresa is putting together what will be hopefully a final draft. We'll review it one more time, and then we will send it over to the board. And I'll once we have it, I'll send it to the board, give you guys a chance to look at it. We can either schedule a special meeting or do it during a regular meeting. It might be if you feel it's not a lengthy discussion, we can just do it at a regular meeting. But if you want to have a little more detailed discussion, then we will schedule a special meeting to finalize it. Amy, do you have anything on that?
I think it should be a special meeting. It's a big document that we made a lot of revisions to, so it's going to take a while.
I agree, but if everybody's okay with it, we'll do it. But if not, we will definitely schedule one. I think it's important that we discuss it. So, naming committee.
Mike, let me mention about naming committee.
Yeah.
We've received 10 letters to name a room after a long-time employee. However, he still works for the Board of Ed, and the rules say that you have to be one for, I think, a year. So I don't know if that's something we can discuss that come under policy review, or is that, I don't remember where that falls.
Well, it is a policy.
We can discuss it, and I guess whether we could change it or waive it, but I just want to mention we have received 10 letters.
Okay. Do you want to share the name, or is that?
I would do that right now.
Okay. Okay. All right. Personnel committee.
We had nothing to be for, so we have not met.
Okay. Cave, Ms. Carol Fabian.
As you've mentioned before, tomorrow is the CAVE Legislative Breakfast. It will be at 8 a.m. at Staples High School. I'm glad to hear that you will be attending, Mr. Chair, along with myself and Ms. D'Angelo Powers. I'm not sure if anyone else is able to make it, but we will see you bright and early in the morning at Staples.
Do you know where it's located at Staples?
What's that?
Do you know the location at Staples it's located?
In the past, when I've attended and it's been at Staples, they will check you in, they will guide you to it. It was in a room off of, like a conference room off of their library.
Because I do intend on going. It's just a very large campus and the directions weren't clear.
Yeah, it's not exactly clear when you get there either, but their security office and when you check in, they'll sign you in and they will direct you.
Although it is my high school alma mater, that looks absolutely nothing like it did in 1979, so I couldn't give any guidance there.
The only, one other thing, since it's been discussed multiple times in advocating and speaking not only to our legislators and the State Board of Education, but to save the date, that Wednesday, March 12th, 2025 is CAVE's Day on the Hill, so that is an opportunity for you to speak to everyone and testify, and on behalf of all of these initiatives that we've discussed at length this evening.
Are there specific times of that, or is it just
It's a full day. It didn't give exact time, but I'm sure as it gets closer,
It's a full day.
Yeah.
Plan to be up there by like 8:30, 8 a.m.
Anything else?
That's it for now.
Mr. Kennedy, CS?
Yeah, not too many updates on a lot of the same conversations that are geared towards the special ed funding. I think he's part of signing that document, so a lot of that conversation happens at those meetings as well.
Building needs, Trust Board just attended, gave us an update on that. As far as others, I am going to schedule a special meeting on Monday, February 3rd. You start at 6:30, right?
Yes.
So I'd say 6:15. Shouldn't take long. Would you rather have half an hour or 15 minutes?
For?
To
review the letter.
To review the petition, the letter, and
Well, if we can have a copy of it beforehand, it shouldn't take us long.
I'll get you a copy by
Yeah.
Friday.
So it shouldn't take long if we have it in advance.
So 15, so say, Teresa, we could do 6:15 on Monday the 3rd, special board meeting. The only agenda item will be to review and approve the documentation,
Letter of support.
letter of support for board initiatives.
And I'll share it with everybody on Friday, and then feel free to email me over the weekend, any updates or changes you think I want to make or things I want to add, and I'll have it all appropriately spelled out for me, okay?
Any good in the order?
Yes, couple things. Last year, I was lucky enough to go attend the art expo at Stratford High School, and I looked around at all the art, and I decided to buy a piece from Taylor Dunbar, who is now recognized. If you do get an opportunity to go to one of the two high schools' art exhibits, the kids love it if you pitch a price for a really nice piece of work. Sometimes they tell you no, or I'll make you a copy, but they do love it, and I love having their artwork up in my office. And so I feel like I picked a really good piece. She may be famous someday, and I think I got a deal on a beautiful painting, so I think that's amazing. In addition, those of you that are on the cell phone committee have a copy. Is there anybody here that would like a copy? Okay. And I have another one upstairs. If you want one too, I'll get one for you upstairs. Okay, we have lots of copies of these and they're fantastic. You guys have them?
Yeah.
When is the book report due?
Yeah.
Monday, 6:15.
But read it backwards. According to Phil, read it backwards. Yeah, I just had a quick, bringing back around to our CT programs. A friend of mine who is a nurse with Yale, graduated from Bunnell, and now has one of the CNAs working for her at, on her unit, was able to go into the high school today and speak to those programs, and she said it was wonderful. She was so excited to be there. She said the students were attentive, engaged, and she's really hoping to let the students know that there are more options besides specifically for that program, a nursing home, or something. There are lots of options out there. I'm also hooking her up with Mr. Villapiano to go on to Stratford. So.
Well, I mentioned Danny Brennan earlier, but I didn't mention that I was able to attend the graduation. It was a much different feeling than when I was there as a recruit.
And I don't know.
I was just gonna say, you're pointing out a graduate and an attendance, but you had your own honor as a veteran, Mr.
I think we should talk about that.
Mr. Kennedy, I think you brought it to our attention.
We got nominated, and what was it actually? The
Connecticut Veterans Hall of Fame. The ceremony was held last Thursday at the Rocky Hill VA facility with a standing room only crowd. 14 out of 50 people were selected, and there were 2 females, 1 man who died last year. His wife was there to accept on his behalf. It was quite an exciting thing. I guess there's a Hall of Fame at the Legislative Building. I'm guessing it's just a plaque with names, maybe. Have you seen it?
When you walk down there's like a pathway between the legislative building and the area you come in, and that's where it is. There's a plaque.
So since they started in 2005, there have been now 214 people inducted, and one was the first President Bush. He was, I think, in the first class.
It was really cool.
Quite an honor.
I received just an email with the update, and I just like reading about veterans, so I just started reading about each person, and then I saw your name. And I was like, huh, look at that.
So the Lieutenant Governor presented us with a medal that she put around us, and he gave us a plaque and other things. But when she heard about our museum, she said, I've got to come see that.
Good.
So I gave her my card, and hopefully she'll come visit.
Well, thank you for your service, and we're so glad you got
And that's the other point. It was not so much about military service as about what people have done after the service. Yeah.
We're honored to have you in our community, and you've earned the respect of many. Again, thank you.
Well,
for
Monday
your
at 6
service.
o'clock, I'll be doing autographs here.
Okay. All right, anything else?
Don't include that on the special meeting agenda.
Not at all.
Look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed unanimously.
Chris, give me 1 second, I'll go get a copy. Sure, upstairs.
Start with that.
was not possible, so I had to read it for you. Because it was more relevant to what the cell phone discussion we were having, so.